Volume 7, Chapter 328, Work for Me. In a dark cave amidst the silence, two familiar arm-sized golden moths with crimson wings stepped out from the shadows. The duo gazed at each other with twisted and pale expressions. It wasn't because of anger, it was because of the amount of natural treasures they had devoured in the past few weeks. Revenge for the oldest, they roared together and then emerged from the cave. One of them sniffed the air and pointed his wing to the left with a dark expression. Now we are strong. That human won't be able to stay alive for long. The other let out an evil laugh. After capturing the human and that little bird, we will torture them, then we will eat them. Indeed, they craved revenge, but the delicious smell of the human made their mouths water. After giving each other a final nod, they left together, blissfully unaware of the hell that awaited them. At the same time, Kyle hummed as he stepped out from the exit portal. His silver hair shimmered in the sunlight, and his ivory-colored hoodie looked clean and fresh. He gazed at the little glass bottle in his hand with a satisfied expression. After tossing the bottle into his mind space, his figure floated above the castle as he narrowed his eyes in the distance. After him, Bia's tiny figure also appeared from the portal. She looked in the same direction and let out a bored sigh. That was too easy. We didn't have to do much to get the cure. I wonder why it was so simple. Wait. Maybe that chameleon was the actual challenge inside the punishment treasure islands. Kyle's lips trickled upward into a faint smile. I had my suspicions, but it's good that we managed to get it without much trouble. Bia circled his head and they set off towards the nearest treasure island. Time flew by as the duo ventured from one treasure island to another. They encountered many new faces and a few familiar ones along the way, but Kyle ignored them. It was better that way. Also, every time Kyle finished exploring a treasure island, he made sure to leave a friendly message on the castle gates. Bia would get angry whenever she caught him scribbling on the gate. First, she didn't like being called little, and second, she found it ironic that he was putting all the blame on her when he was the one taking everything. Caution, the little phoenix took everything. All the people who saw Kyle's friendly message got mad and frustrated, but in the end, there was nothing they could do except find another treasure island. Among them, Jayan was the most frustrated one because, for some unknown reason, he found the message the most. Haley and Riss also came across one of Kyle's friendly messages and they were left speechless. Still, Haley chose to ignore it, while Riss, who was curious about the person behind the friendly reminder, couldn't find out who it was. In the end, the duo decided to leave it alone and started following behind an interesting winged demi-human who was slaying monsters stronger than his rank. Amidst all this, everyone in the realm was getting stronger with each passing day. It wasn't easy though, and due to the countless challenges there were some casualties as well. Regardless, those who persevered until the end reaped the sweet rewards of their hard work. After 2 long months, Kyle was sitting comfortably on a tree trunk. As he opened one of his eyes, he was greeted by a breathtaking sight. The surroundings were filled with towering green trees and a mesmerizing crystal-clear stream flowing gracefully amidst the trees. His gaze wandered until it settled on a particular tree opposite the stream. A hint of annoyance flashed in his eyes. "How long are you two going to follow me?" The bird on his head moved, deliberately trying to mess up his hair before letting out an innocent hum. "So you finally decided to finish them?" A vein bulged out on Kyle's forehead as he grabbed the bird and placed her on his chest instead. Soon, the duo got busy with their own battle. The bird wanted to sit on his head, while Kyle didn't want her to because he had just washed his hair. On the other hand, the 2 golden moths hiding behind the tree were absolutely terrified when they heard Kyle's voice. The duo had been following the human for a while now, but they couldn't even lay a finger on him. They tried to secretly attack Kyle countless times but failed miserably. In the end, they decided to put traps around the human, but they failed again. First, the human would always fly, and second, even if he somehow started walking, he would avoid that particular spot where the trap was laid. They looked at each other and with a nod, they started flying away quietly. After watching the human and the supposedly little bird that turned out to be a huge phoenix, they knew that winning against the human was impossible. That's why they were trying to set up a dangerous trap one last time, but the human knew about their location. It was dangerous, too dangerous. Forget about revenge and the sweet scent, their lives were more precious. The duo froze in their tracks when a shadow fell upon them. They held onto each other tightly and looked up with wide eyes. A pair of bright green eyes stared back at them. Kyle's eyes narrowed dangerously at the moths. "It's been a while." "No, I sensed you the moment you started following me, so what should I do with you now?" He clicked his tongue when Bia's voice echoed in his head. "Hey, at least give me a heads up before disappearing into thin air." Kyle extended his hand to touch one of the moths, but to his surprise, the duo immediately jumped back. Bia sat down on a nearby tree to watch the show. After all, she knew Kyle could handle the moths easily. Opposite her, the moths spread out their wings to send wind currents at Kyle, but before their attack could land on the human, he vanished into thin air. Suddenly, a faint murmur echoed in the air, sending chills down their spines. Ice domain. The moment the words fell, an icy aura spread out in the forest, enveloping everything around the two moths. Kyle gazed up and held out his palm toward a floating ice particle, but instead of melting, the ice turned into a wisp of smoke upon touching his skin. The moths panicked and tried to fly away, but they were stopped by the long, pointy icicles emerging from the ground with a loud rumble. The air cracked and large smoky clouds formed above their heads. In the next second, round ice pellets dropped from the clouds, heading straight for the panicked moths. The temperature increased so much that even Bia had to move a little further away. Still, before the ice could kill the moths, Kyle appeared in front of them. His gaze wandered around the frozen trees and the ground covered in icicles. Even the crystal-clear stream that once flowed gracefully amidst the trees was now frozen into ice. Finally, his eyes stopped on the two creatures that were half frozen, their teeth chattering as they struggled to move. "How are you feeling?" Kyle hummed. He did not use his blue flames since he had no idea how to melt things frozen by the flames. However, he found that he could easily control the ice within the ice domain according to his will. He tapped the moth's head with his knuckles, a small smile forming on his lips. "I will release you, but from now on you'll be working for me." The moth's eyes flickered with unshed tears as they struggled to voice their answers, but the icy aura around their necks made it difficult for them to speak. In the end, the duo could barely manage a nod in response. Kyle's eyes narrowed. He rubbed his fingers and the icy aura around the moth's bodies scattered in the air. The moths gasped for breath as they cried out, "Human, how dare you release us? We won't follow you anymore." Kyle let out a chuckle, his tone turning dark. "Of course I will, but like I said, from now on you two are going to work for me. If you can't work for me, there's no use in keeping you alive." He dragged his sentence and his eyes turned crescent. "Well, the meat of two strong insects would be very delicious." The moths trembled under his gaze. The younger one even started crying. They reluctantly agreed to Kyle's terms, but deep down they were still planning their escape. But Kyle's next words made their mind blank. "By the way, don't even think about running away. I can track you with the scent perception skill." Chapter 329, An Object. The moths stared at Kyle as his words rang inside their heads. The moment they comprehended Kyle's words, they gasped together. How, after all, the scent perception skill was something they were born with. How did the human have the skill? Anger flashed through the moth's eyes when they recalled how Kyle killed their brother. "How dare you, human? Did you dig up our brother's core after killing him?" The eldest one let out a cry and raised his trembling wing to attack Kyle, but before he could, the human smacked his wing away. "Don't talk so much." Kyle clicked his tongue and rummaged inside his mind space but found nothing useful. In the end, he raised his finger and started scribing two symbols in the air. The mana in the air gently swirled around his finger before a faint light appeared. Kyle squinted his eyes. The light was so faint that he couldn't see it clearly, but he was sure he was going in the right direction. Bia's eyes narrowed at the symbols and she let out a surprised gasp. "Are you sure it's safe? They could die if you make a mistake." "Not sure." Kyle's hand shook in the middle and his forehead turned sweaty. But after a minute, two faint yet complete symbols shone in the air. He moved his finger and the symbols immediately vanished into the moths' heads. The moths cried out with surprise when a sharp pain stabbed their heads, but the pain vanished after a few seconds. Kyle let out a sigh of relief and massaged his head. When he first read the array books he found in the Tower of Opportunity, he didn't understand a single thing. But in the past 2 months, he picked them up again and finally discovered something useful inside. It was the symbol of torment. The symbol itself was very easy, but it took him a whole month just to figure out its purpose. Still, when he did, he was thrilled. If used correctly on someone, the symbol would torment them if they ever tried to attack the one who drew it. Its usage was limited, though. After all, it could only be used on monsters. "As long as it's working, it's fine, I guess," Kyle said with a chuckle, and the two moths in front of him turned pale. The duo desperately wanted to run away, but they knew it was too late. As Kyle continued to intimidate the moths, Bia unfurled her wings and landed on his head. She watched as he further frightened the moths by warning them that if they ever dared to betray or disobey him, they would meet their demise due to a powerful spell he had placed on them. Kyle clapped his hands, signifying the end of his threats. "Now go find as many treasures as possible and come report to me every week." The duo gave him a trembling nod and attempted to flap their wings, but due to their previous injuries, they couldn't fly properly. Instantly, they dropped to the ground. Kyle ignored them and let out a yawn. He decided to climb a nearby tree to rest. However, Bia started protesting, saying it was too cold. Kyle blinked and looked around. It was a bit cold with everything frozen in ice, but it didn't bother him much. Still, he hummed and started walking away, but suddenly one of the moths called out to him. "Hey, human!" Kyle stopped and glanced back. "What?" The moths exchanged glances before the oldest one's eyes flashed with determination. Eek, he jolted when Kyle turned around. After taking a breath, he continued speaking, though with less confidence. "If You release us from the spell, I will tell you about something that's inside your body. Kyle frowned, narrowing his eyes dangerously at them. Well, let's hear it first. The moth's eyes sparkled a little. He knew his words were working. I know you don't know because even though you got the scent perception skill after killing our brother, you can't use it on yourself. I will tell you, but remove the spell first. Kyle's frown deepened. When the hell did these two idiots learn how to bargain? Bia lowered her head to stare at the moths. First tell me, can you use the skill on yourself? I cannot. Then hear them out. They probably know something. Don't tell me they sense my bloodline. He bent down to gaze at them directly with a hard expression. I won't remove the spell, but I promise not to harm you as long as you work for me while I am in this realm. So speak. The moths became perplexed. They wanted to protest, but under Kyle's threatening gaze they spilled everything. It's something very bad. The other moth nodded in agreement. Unlike the cold and pleasant scent coming from your body, it doesn't smell good. Kyle rubbed the artifact in his ear. I know that you too can sense me, but can you sense my rank as well? The duo immediately shook their heads. No, we cannot. At first, we only smelled the sweet scent coming from your body, but when we found you for the first time, we sensed something else as well. Something dark. It's probably an object. Kyle blinked. An object? The duo's eyes flashed with something as they gazed at each other. It's very tiny, but it's deeply rooted in your heart. You can't remove it. Yes, indeed. If you want to get rid of it, we can help you. Bia's eyes flashed with annoyance. What the hell are they saying? They're not talking about my bloodline, but how is it possible? Kyle rubbed his chest. He wasn't sure what it could be. If it was related to his bloodline, it should be all around inside his body, not in a specific place. Or maybe his bloodline originated from the object. His mind wandered for a few seconds before he shook his head and sat down in front of the duo with a serious expression. Tell me more about it. Also, what is this sweet scent you mentioned that you sensed in my body? The eldest moth licked his lips as he backed away from Kyle, fearing that the human would kill him after learning they wanted to eat him. The scent, it's very pleasant and cold, just like an extremely powerful treasure. That's why we wanted to eat Yo-eek. He jumped back when Kyle slammed his hand on the ground. The human's eyes darkened as he clenched his hand. Now tell me about the dark object. Can you sense if it's stronger than the cold scent? The moth shook his head. No, it's not. It's very weak compared to the scent. Kyle gazed at the ground, deep in thought. So does that mean it's not connected to my bloodline? After pondering for a while, he snapped his head up, almost scaring the souls out of the moths' bodies. You mentioned you can remove it. How? The moth's eyes sparkled with glee upon hearing Kyle's question. Instantly, they tried to hide their excitement, unaware that Kyle had already noticed their crescent-shaped eyes. We can, if you just let us dig into your heart. We'll take out that tiny thing. Wah, they cried out when Kyle stood up abruptly. Bia's body tumbled downward from his head, but she quickly unfurled her wings to fly above him. Wow, did you hear it? They want to dig into your... Should I just kill them? The little phoenix snapped, ready to use her most powerful skill, but Kyle grabbed her body. He waved his hand at the moths with a cold expression. Go do your job. Also, remember that you will die if you dare to disobey, so make sure to come report to me every week or else I'll come to you. The duo trembled and instead of flying, they crawled away in another direction. Kyle closed his eyes and took a deep breath. His cold expression crumbled, replaced with a deep one. Just how many problems does my body have? Bia's eyes traveled upward and she flew away from his hand. Hey, don't feel down. It will be fine, let's go ask Haley, maybe he could help. Kyle nodded quickly and they started traveling in a random direction. After a few minutes, Kyle used the scent perception skill to locate the boar, but he stopped after just half a minute due to the countless smells flooding his nose. In the end, he let out a sigh. He's too far, I can't sense him. Let's keep moving then, we'll find him on the way. The duo traveled toward the west. Along the way, they stumbled upon a few treasure islands. Kyle's mood did improve, but the thought of something dark lurking inside his body was always present in the back of his mind. He would rub his chest from time to time, thinking maybe it wasn't dangerous. However, after knowing about the object deep inside his heart, he knew it was something he needed to remove as soon as possible, regardless of whether it was dangerous or not. Chapter 330, Slimy Creatures. Kyle glanced down from the top of a towering tree, observing the two massive beasts chomping on strange blue fruits. Haley and Riss, the duo, sat together in their true forms above a broad stone bed, keeping a keen eye on the winged demi-human Sinon, a human girl, and two elves engaged in a battle against a group of B-rank green frogs with black dots covering their bodies. The area surrounding the stone bed was teeming with dirty water and countless tall, thorny trees. Additionally, numerous low-ranked frogs were leaping out from the water, causing Sinon and his companions to be pushed back. Cursing under his breath, the demi-human retaliated by kicking one of the frogs, only to be caught off guard by another frog leaping at him from behind. It was clear that Sinon and his companions were doing their best to escape, but their efforts were in vain as they found themselves encircled by the countless frogs. Kyle pinched his nose in response to the stench wafting from the water, and the tiny phoenix sitting on his shoulder let out a disgusted groan. Why are they even bothering to fight those slimy creatures? It's so gross. I am more surprised by Haley. He is eating while watching the same slimy creatures. Bia blinked in surprise. What about the lizard sitting next to him? Well, let's not talk about him. After all, lizards do eat frogs, right? Bia's eyes crinkled with amusement as she noticed a hint of speechlessness in Kyle's voice. He was mocking the chameleon. We have been keeping an eye on them for a while now. What's the plan? I wouldn't be surprised if the lizard tried to strangle you, given your not-so-good history. Kyle rolled his eyes and waved at the little phoenix. Go talk to Haley so he can stop Riss in time. Right now, they're probably hiding from Sinon and the others. They don't know that I know their location because of the scent perception skill. Meanwhile, I will go help Sinon a bit. Bia unfurled her wings and soared away with a chuckle. Kyle clenched his fists and eyed the dirty water with a groan. Let's try not to get dirty. In the next second, his body vanished into thin air. At the same time, Bia's figure hovered above the boar. Riss's ears perked up and he narrowed his eyes at the little beast. What's this tiny little bird doing here? Wait, why is the bird so strong? Also, I feel like I have seen her somewhere. Haley hurriedly stopped the chameleon before he could grab Bia with his tail. Stop, I know her. Bia released a relieved breath and landed on Haley's shoulder. Immediately, she heard the boar's voice in her head. Why are you here? Kyle wants to talk. Haley frowned when he saw Riss's interested eyes. The chameleon probably overlooked Bia's presence before because of Kyle, but now he was fully focused on her. Don't you dare do something funny. Riss clicked his tongue and retracted his tail. On the other hand, Haley hurriedly looked around. Where is Kyle? He's right in front of you. Haley snapped his head up to stare at the figure that materialized inches away from the winged demi-human. Sinon cried out and almost lost his balance midair, but he quickly regained his composure. Bia shook her head with a sigh. No one can get used to his sudden appearance. She unfurled her wings and left Haley's side with a few more words. I am leaving. Just stop the lizard in time if he wants to harm Kyle. Haley slowly turned around to look at Riss, who was fuming when he saw Kyle's face. That bastard is here, so what if he's the one who asked the question Master left behind? I'm going to break one of his legs. However, before he could throw caution to the wind and leap at Kyle, Haley grabbed his tail with a chuckle. Let's talk a little, shall we? The chameleon's eyes widened. How dare you stop me? Do you want to fight? Haha, it's been a while, but believe me, it'll be as painful as before. Haley's forehead turned sweaty. He cursed under his breath and with all his strength, dragged Riss away so as not to disrupt the battle opposite them. While the two beasts argued about whether they should break Kyle's legs or not, Kyle himself smiled and looked at Sinon's frightened face. What's up? The wings behind the demi-human fluttered as he looked at Kyle with hopeful eyes. The previous anger about almost falling into the water due to Kyle vanished into thin air. Kyle, it's good you're here. I'm dead tired. Help us out a little. We accidentally stumbled upon this place. Now all we want is to retreat, but these annoying frogs aren't giving us a chance. Kyle opened his mouth to say that he would help, but under his dumbfounded gaze, Sinon flew away in the distance. The demi-human stopped at a nearby tree and waved at Kyle before sprawling on a branch like a starfish. Bia circled Kyle and said with utmost seriousness, he sure knows how to dump his work on others. With a sigh, Kyle gazed at the human girl and two elves still fighting with the frogs. He waved his hand. I will distract the frogs. The trio nodded, and in an instant, countless ice spears formed in the air. Kyle's eyes locked onto the frogs, and the spears shot out toward them with lightning-fast speed. The frogs cried out in surprise and scattered, trying to disappear into the water. Kyle lowered his body and glanced at the trio behind him. Climb a tree. The trio exchanged glances and, without asking any questions, hurriedly climbed the nearby trees just like Sinon. Once they were at a safe distance, blue flames surged out around Kyle's body. The flames spread out on the water. A few muffled cries of pain rang out in the air as the frogs in the water tried to flee in different directions, but before they could, the flames traveled in all directions, turning everything into ice. Chapter 331, Remove the Artifact. The human girl and two elves stared at Kyle in shock. They had been fighting the frogs for hours, but Kyle had effortlessly defeated so many in just a minute. They gasped and looked at him with awe. Sinon opened one of his eyes as he felt the temperature dropping with each passing second. He glanced at Kyle and clicked his tongue. Show off. Kyle's ears twitched when he heard Sinon's remarks. He dusted his shirt softly and raised a brow with an expression that seemed to say, so what? Sinon laughed but was too tired to continue talking. He decided to rest on a branch for a while. With a hum, Kyle looked at the ice, which transformed into bright particles and floated in the air, further astonishing the trio. As the ice vanished, two round orbs dropped to the ground. Oh. Skill cores. Bia's voice was flat because being with Kyle had made her a bit numb to these types of things. Kyle examined the cores. One was larger, almost the size of his palm, while the other was relatively small. At first, he ignored them, thinking about the frog's ugly appearance. But suddenly an old memory flashed in his mind. In that memory, he and Nine found a small core after defeating a tiny goblin. At that moment, his thoughts were, it's a goblin core. What skill can such a small goblin, not even F rank, possess? That's why he tossed the core to Nine, only to later discover that the small goblin core actually had a very useful skill. That's why Kyle immediately changed his mind and grabbed the cores. Sinon, who was just about to jump towards the cores, thinking that Kyle didn't need them, stopped in his tracks. He sighed with regret and leaned back against the tree branch. I need to increase my speed. Bia was surprised. She gazed at the two cores in Kyle's hand as he peeked inside. Kyle's face lit up and he threw the bigger core at Sinon, who caught it with surprise. Why are you giving me the bigger one? I thought the bigger the core, the stronger the skill. Or is my knowledge wrong? A doubtful expression appeared on Sinon's face as he stared at Kyle, the trio sitting on the tree's side because they knew they would get nothing. Kyle let out a chuckle and waved his hand. It's because the small one is useful to me, the other one is not. With an O, Sinon spread his wings and approached Kyle. Is it a unique skill? He waited with anticipation. Low-rank skills weren't useful when fighting high-rank monsters, so he was sure Kyle had found a unique low-rank skill, like breathing underwater or having clear vision underwater. But Kyle's next words left him speechless. It's an F-rank water skill called Aqua Ball. Sinon's expression was screaming, if it's just a normal water skill, why the hell are you smirking? Yet he composed his expression and gave a pat on Kyle's shoulder. Indeed, it's a very good skill. Kyle's eyes sparkled as he nodded in response. Of course it is, I have been searching for a water-type skill for ages. Sinon gazed at him with a blank expression, thinking that maybe low-rank water-type skills were really strong. However, he then thought about his skills. He had 5 low-rank water-type skills, but they were never useful in actual combat. Wait, maybe I used them incorrectly. He was doubting his skills, unaware that for Kyle, the water-type skill was only useful for a quick bath or cleaning his hands. Suddenly, Haley's voice echoed inside Kyle's head, and he hurriedly said goodbye to Sinon. Unfortunately, before the winged demi-human could properly reply, he vanished. Sinon gazed at the space in front of him with a blank expression. He retracted his hand that was ready to flick one last pat on Kyle's shoulder as a goodbye. Next time, for now, I think I should go practice my water-type skills, Bia cursed under her breath. Her wings fluttered as she dived in the direction where she sensed Kyle's presence. On the other hand, Kyle stopped in front of the winged boar, who stared at him with an ugly expression. The boar's white fur was covered in dirt, mud, and all sorts of filth. Kyle's body was floating as he circled Haley with an innocent expression. What happened? Haley felt like crying. He just got beaten up by Riss because he stopped the latter, who was hellbent on breaking one of Kyle's legs. He's not even thankful. I should have just let Riss smack him once or twice. Haley glared at Kyle, but almost coughed out blood when he saw a faint, barely visible smile at the corner of his lips. The boar's eyes narrowed dangerously as he raised his paw to wipe that smile off, but before he could, Bia appeared and asked him the same question. What happened to you? The boar's eyelid twitched because just like Kyle, the corner of Bia's eyes trickled upward with mirth. He retracted his paw, unwilling to speak further with the infuriating duo. Just tell me what you want to ask, I have more things to do. Or more specifically, I have to go check on the lizard that I tossed inside a pit. Kyle's expression hardened when he heard the boar's words. The previous mischievousness evaporated from his eyes. His feet touched the ground and he grabbed his chest. Haley was surprised when the human stared at him with a deadly serious expression. Can you sense something dangerous inside my body? Huh, Haley blinked, but when the meaning behind Kyle's words dawned on him, he knitted his brows. Something dangerous? Kyle nodded and waited for his answer, but after a few seconds, Haley gazed at him with a speechless expression. First, remove the presence concealing artifact you're wearing. I can't sense anything because of it. Kyle's eyes narrowed. Bia, are you sure he can help? He can't even go past the artifact. Bia rolled her eyes. Just remove the artifact, it's not a big deal. Geez, all right. Chapter 332, it's eating his soul. Kyle unclasped the white earring from his ear and stared at Haley. Now, the boar immediately sensed Kyle's rank and gasped with surprise. Wait, why are you still S rank? I believe you found a lot of treasures in the past 2 months. Kyle let out a sigh and eyed the clear, bright sky. I am just a tiny bit away from the next rank. Bia let out a chuckle. Indeed, it was strange. Even she broke through to the next rank a week ago. Just tell him you're stronger than your rank. Kyle gazed at his stats and his face fell. Stats: name, Kyle bloodline, celestial rank, S strength, S plus mana, SS agility, S plus talent, SSS plus rank luck as skills. All my main stats are already so high, why the hell can't I break through? It's like there's a thin wall blocking my path. He shook his head with a serious and determined expression. It's okay, I have a feeling that just one more step and I'll break through. Kyle stared at Haley with a deep expression. Just tell me, can you sense anything dangerous inside my body or not? With a nod, Haley dispatched his mana inside Kyle's body. He couldn't peek inside because he wasn't strong enough, but he could probably sense it if he used his mana. Kyle's brows knitted together when a probing sensation appeared inside his body, but he relaxed and let the sensation roam. After 2 long minutes, an astonished expression appeared on Haley's face. Why do you have so much mana in your body? Also, there's something cold and very powerful flowing inside your body. Kyle gave him a nod. He already knew this much from the moths. What about the thing I asked? Can you sense any dangerous object or not? Haley paused, a thoughtful expression apparent on his face. I can't sense anything dangerous, but there's a strong force inside you. It completely destroyed my mana when I got close. While they were talking, Riss stomped towards them from behind. He grumbled and cursed under his breath. You sneaky boar, when did you learn to cheat? I just slept for a while and the whole world changed. He paused when he saw Kyle. Instantly his eyes narrowed at the earring in Kyle's hand. Oh, what's this little thing doing here? Haley wanted to stop him, but in a flash he appeared beside Kyle and sniffed the earring. It's the same, I remember, it's a defective artifact. Kyle stepped back and a puzzled expression appeared on his face. Huh? Riss was furious with the human, but after faintly hearing Kyle and Haley's interesting conversation, he pushed aside his thoughts of revenge. Don't you know, Odiak actually tried to create a huge storage space that could completely conceal everything inside, just like the mind space. But he failed halfway, and even though the earring has the concealing effect, it doesn't have a storage space. Tusk, he failed so many times I can't even count. Kyle's eyes widened, not because of the information, but because of the mention of the mind space. This lizard knows about the mind space. Haley raised his paw and smacked Riss's head. Show some respect, Odiak is your master. The chameleon hissed and glared at him. So what? That old dwarf left me behind, saying it's dangerous and all that. Besides, he can't even hear, so who cares if I badmouth him? Haley groaned and closed his mouth. He understood how Riss felt because he had felt the same in the past. Riss clicked his tongue and turned his head towards Kyle, his eyes filled with curiosity. I can feel a tremendous power flowing within you, even stronger than that dwarf. How did you acquire it? Kyle raised his hand to stop him. Wait, can you sense anything else like something dangerous inside me? Riss paused and his eyes flashed with a bright light. After a few seconds, his eyes widened. He opened and closed his mouth repeatedly. Both Kyle and Haley tensed, waiting for him to speak, alarmed by his ugly and angry expression. Riss took a deep breath, then angrily slammed his tail on the ground. Who in the world put that disgusting thing inside your body? Kyle clenched his jaw, and a look of astonishment spread across Haley's face. The boar always knew Riss was stronger than him, but he couldn't believe that Riss could sense what he couldn't. Kyle looked around and settled on a nearby boulder. Bia landed on his shoulder. The duo, along with Haley, patiently waited for Riss to calm down. For some reason, the chameleon's expression was filled with both anger and disgust. After 2 long minutes, Riss locked eyes with Kyle. His gaze held a sense of pity, an emotion that Kyle rarely witnessed before. Taking a deep breath, Kyle braced himself, his face devoid of any emotion. Just tell me what it is. Riss turned his attention to Haley and settled himself opposite Kyle. Just as you suspected, it's an object, more specifically, it's an artifact. I'm not certain about its rank as it is currently dormant. He paused for a moment. I haven't sensed something so repulsive in my entire life. There's an eerie, yet strangely divine, glow surrounding the artifact. It's likely feeding on you. Even when I was with Odiak, stumbling upon something like this was extremely rare. Kyle's expressionless face crumbled, and he paled as an ominous feeling surged inside his heart. Haley let out a sharp breath. Is it harming the kid's body? Riss shook his head. You know, Haley, it's rare for me to express pity for someone. If only the artifact was harming his body, it would have been great, but it's not. It's eating his soul. Haley's eyes widened, and he subconsciously gazed at Kyle, who paled even more. However, Riss spoke again, and this time his voice was even more solemn. As I said, it's dormant, so I believe it has already eaten its fill. Kid, didn't you feel extreme pain when a part of your soul was torn? After a long silence, Kyle's eyes traveled to Riss. Indeed, when he was in the tower, a sudden pain wrecked his body, making his mind go blank. But at that time, he thought it was because of his bloodline. But now he realized how wrong he was. Is it possible to remove it? Riss shook his head again. It's deep inside your heart, and if someone forcefully tried to remove it, you won't stay alive. Haley stared at him, and Riss let out a tired sigh. There is a way the person who put it in your body can remove it, but I don't think you know who did it. Chapter 333, A Blank Fate. After a long silence, Kyle massaged his temples. He wanted to curse, but the problem was, who should he curse? After all, he didn't even know who put the artifact in his body. Bia sensed his discomfort, so she gently nuzzled her head into his neck. Haley observed the pair and then turned to Riss. His voice echoed within the chameleon's head. Is there any other way? I don't want the kid to die. Riss looked towards the boar. Have you become attached to him? Haley paused, unsure of how to respond. Without even realizing it, spending time with Kyle had caused him to develop a subconscious care for him. Riss closed his eyes. I am not certain if there is another way. However, you know my mind has problems. How about seeking advice from the Realm Guardian? He is a divine rank individual and he might have better insight. Haley nodded and looked over at Kyle. Without hesitation, he asked if Kyle would like to seek the Guardian. Kyle agreed immediately. After all, anything was better than nothing. He stood up and turned to face Riss. Thank you. And do you have any idea when the dormant artifact will activate again? He paused for a moment. Also, could you give me more details about the mind space? Riss blinked in surprise. It was fine for the human to ask about the artifact, but he wondered why Kyle was asking about the mind space. How did he pick up on those specific words from the previous sentence? He examined Kyle from head to toe. You're familiar with the concept of mind space? Haley furrowed his brows. It's a separate space that opens up when someone reaches the divine rank. I know about it because Master opened his mind space before leaving. He turned toward Kyle. You know about it, just a little. Two pairs of eyes stared at him, eagerly awaiting an explanation. Kyle raised his hand in surrender. All right, I know about it because I have got one. Huh, Riss's eyes widened, looking at Kyle as if he were some kind of freak. Haley's expression mirrored the same astonishment. The chameleon's body flickered around him. Wait, you have a mind space. Are you kidding me, kiddo? You haven't even reached the SS rank. The two beasts were stunned by this revelation, but after a few moments they regained their composure. Suddenly, Riss's tail grabbed Haley's paw and he stared at him with deadly seriousness. Go to the Guardian, hurry up, don't waste any time. Kyle let out a sigh and pushed the matter of the mind space to the back of his mind. Regardless, he already knew almost everything about it anyway. Before Kyle left, Riss gave his body one last examination with narrow eyes. The artifact is dormant right now, so I think it'll wake up in a year or two. Or maybe 3, I am not too sure about the exact time, but it's a soul-consuming artifact, so I believe it's gonna consume your soul until it's fully brimming with energy. Kyle thanked him one last time and left with Bia and Haley. After the trio had gone, the chameleon crystal body flashed with countless sparks. Its large blue beady eyes turned faintly red, and it hurriedly rubbed them with a pained groan. A drop of blood trickled down from its left eye, and it quickly closed it to avoid further damage. Tusk, I really hate using the fate skill. If I hadn't seen talent in him, I would have never used it. But it's strange that the kid has no future, no past. It's completely blank. Why is he even here in the first place? Even though my head is all jumbled up, just after using the skill for a few seconds, I sense that he shouldn't have been part of the people who entered this realm. Clearly, he should have died because of the artifact before even turning 18. Or maybe I saw it wrong. Whatever, it's too complicated to figure out. Also, it's not like my skill is 100% accurate. Even in the past, it's always been 50% inaccurate. I probably sense it wrong. The chameleon mumbled under its breath and after resting for a while went in another direction to observe someone else. After traveling for 2 days straight, Kyle, Bia, and Haley arrived in an area that was completely wrecked. The trio peeked from behind a large leaf held in Kyle's hand. The air around them was filled with violent mana. The land was barren, devoid of any greenery. Additionally, a faint dark energy permeated the air. Kyle narrowed his eyes and sniffed the air after activating the scent perception skill. What's happening? Haley blinked and narrowed his eyes at him. Why are you sniffing the air? Don't tell me you learned the bad habit from Riss. Kyle hurriedly pinched his nose when a foul smell entered his nostrils. It doesn't smell good. I think someone's fighting in the distance. Is it even safe? Haley's eyes showed surprise. He cleared his throat, clearly reluctant to show that he couldn't sense anything. The last time I saw the Guardian, he was fighting with Gil, so it's safe. The Guardian is strong enough to restrain him. Kyle let out an "oh" and pointed towards the distance with the huge leaf they had grabbed along the way. Let's go then, we need to find the Guardian. With a nod, the duo started moving forward. Bia circled above their heads, trying to see as far as she could. However, her sight was limited by the massive dust clouds billowing towards the sky. After a few minutes, a powerful tremor shook the land, causing the ground to quake beneath their feet. A flash of dark electricity appeared in the sky. Kyle narrowed his eyes and observed the electricity. Haley spread out his wings to inspect it as well, but at that exact moment, the duo spotted a faint dark dot hurtling towards them with lightning-fast speed. They watched as the dot grew larger within a second. Their trance was broken when Bia let out a loud cry. Oh shit, they cursed together, and Haley quickly leaped in another direction. He glanced back, momentarily forgetting that Kyle was weaker, but before he could worry about him, a body landed with a resounding thud in front of him. Haley coughed as another cloud of dust billowed into the air. Suddenly, a relieved sigh sounded from behind him, nearly causing his heart to jump out of his chest. The boar turned around to see Kyle wiping his forehead. That was a close one. The faint, illusionary old man appeared in the air, but instead of focusing on the massive pit, he stared at the human and the boar with a speechless expression. Why the hell are you two crawling around in such a dangerous place? Chapter 334, It could be fatal. Haley's face stiffened and Kyle obediently went behind him, clearly shifting the blame to the boar. Just like Kyle, Bia hurriedly hid her presence behind the boar's huge body. The duo fell silent as if they didn't exist at all. Haley's eyelid twitched as he stared at the guardian with a blank expression. The illusionary old man stared back at him with narrowed eyes. "Why are you here again?" The boar let out a deep sigh. "There's something we want to discuss." The illusionary figure replied with an "oh." His eyes traveled to Kyle and a hint of curiosity flashed in his eyes. Instantly, he waved his hand, gesturing for the trio to follow him. However, before they could leave, a hoarse voice echoed from the pit. Gil crawled out, laughing like a maniac. "Ha ha ha, you can't kill me, I'll tear apart all the outsiders." The illusionary old man gazed at the dark, bloodied figure and waved his hand. In the next second, a few chairs and a table materialized in the air as he gazed at the boar and human. "Let's talk here, I need to keep an eye on someone." Haley nodded, but before he could move, Kyle's figure flashed and he sat down opposite the old man. Bia followed suit. The boar's eyes flickered as he shrank in size and sat down on the table. The old man stared at Kyle with a profound expression. After a few moments, Kyle felt a familiar probing sensation within him. A strange feeling stirred in his chest, but he remained calm and allowed the old man to examine him. The man let out a thoughtful hum. "I think I know why you're here, kid." He tapped the table and pointed his finger at Kyle's chest. "Tell me, how did you find out? Haley isn't strong enough to sense it." Kyle gazed at the finger with a solemn expression. He could tell that the old man opposite him was powerful, even though it was just a fragment of the latter consciousness. "He can sense everything even though I'm wearing the earring. So does that mean the earring can't hide my presence from people above SSS plus rank?" Kyle stroked Bia's feathers and locked eyes with the old man. "The chameleon told me." The old man looked at the faint particles floating away from his body. "Oh, Rhys woke up. I thought with his messed up memory he wouldn't." Kyle placed his hands on the table, ready to speak, but the old man raised his hand to stop him. "Kid, you've got potential, I can see it. But I believe Rhys already told you that if he or anyone else forcefully tries to remove the artifact from your body, it could be fatal. That lizard's memory is a bit jumbled, but if there was another way, he would have mentioned it right away." Kyle's brow furrowed, and his voice trembled slightly. "So there's no other way?" The old man paused for a moment. "It's a divine rank artifact, so I don't think there's much you can do except find the person who put it in your body. When you and the other kids entered the realm, I sensed 4 divine artifacts." He sucked in a deep breath. "It's almost unbelievable to think I sensed so many, which is why I had to double-check. One of them is with that kid Alec, right?" He glanced at Haley, who nodded in agreement. The boar's eyes widened in shock upon hearing the number. Kyle blinked, his face paling instantly. 4, does that mean the other 3 people are in danger too?" The old man smiled. "Don't worry about the others." He looked down at Gil, who was attempting to fly once more. The old man flicked his hand, and a beam shot out from his finger, pushing the dark man back into the pit. "Unlike you, their artifacts were created to guide, not harm. Although there was this one peculiar artifact I saw with a kid your age. I wonder how he got it. That artifact seemed to make its owner miserable in order to gain more strength." Kyle listened intently. Suddenly, Bia spoke in his mind. "Alec has something called a system, right? Don't tell me the system is an artifact." The old man moved his eyes toward Bia, intrigued. "So you already know about it?" Bia's eyes widened. "OMG, he can hear me." The old man chuckled and shook his head, his eyes filled with amusement as he looked at Kyle. "You know, Alec, I can't predict the future, but I can tell that you possess a powerful bloodline. I don't know its true strength, but it surpasses even that of the divine." He was certain that if his real body were here, or if any other divine being could probe Kyle's body, they would be tempted to dissect him to see how the kid possessed something so powerful. "Maybe that's why your fate is entangled with him. I wonder if you also know the other 2. Kyle's expression was gloomy, but he'd be lying if he said he wasn't interested in finding out the names of the other 2 individuals who possessed the divine artifacts. He tentatively let out a sigh. "Who are they? Maybe I know them." The old man's eyes crinkled with amusement, but then his expression turned serious. "Go, don't waste your time, become strong, the more the better. The artifact in your body is dormant right now because it consumed too much energy. As a mortal, I don't think your soul is strong enough to feed so much energy to the artifact. Maybe it's because of your bloodline. Regardless, I don't think it would wake up soon, except if the owner called it back." He stood up from the chair and gazed into the distance. "Haley would have already told you that the planet is hidden. Let me increase your knowledge. After the secret realm was opened, I sensed a foreign presence outside, somewhere near the planet's core. The shield hiding the planet is sustained by the energy from the planet's core, but it's getting weaker. That means the foreign individual is harming the planet's core." The man gazed at Kyle with a deep expression. "I don't know if James, Odiak, and my original body are alive, but I can tell you that the planet is still in danger. So if you're able to stay alive, help Alec." Chapter 335, Another Goal. Kyle's face was expressionless as he floated away from the old man. He caressed Bia's feathers and let out a faint chuckle. In the end, he didn't tell me how to remove this thing from my body, and he subtly implied that I might die. Haley flew beside him with a deep expression. He asked you to get stronger. Maybe you can remove it once you become stronger. Kyle eyed the clear sky. He raised his hand and wisps of blue flames traveled on his palm. No, he asked me to get strong so I can help Alec when he's fighting the foreign individual harming the planet's core. He didn't give me a clear answer if I would survive or not. Haley decreased his size into a fur ball and landed on his shoulder. Why are you speaking as if you've lost hope? There are so many people in this world who may be facing something worse. Instead of being down, how about looking at the positive side? You still have time to find a way to save yourself. The boar's eyes flashed with countless emotions as he gazed at the kid. He wished he could do something for him, but he knew he couldn't. Not to mention the fact that he was trying to lift the kid's spirit with just empty words, when he could also sense from the Guardian's words that Kyle's survival would be hard. Bia, who had been quietly sitting on Kyle's other shoulder, raised her head. For some reason, she wasn't sensing any strong emotion from him. She thought he might feel worse, but he was actually quite calm. Hey, with your intense luck, I don't think the artifact can do anything to you, so don't worry, okay? I'll let you ride me if you want. Kyle's lips curled into a smile. However, amidst all this, he noticed something strange about himself. This feeling, it's very similar to the one I felt a few years ago. Strangely enough, something inside me is screaming that there's no need to do anything. Just lay low and live your life. But why? Bia, do you know why I wanted to become stronger? The reason isn't a big one. Just like any other person, I wanted to protect my family and friends. However, I got everything too easily. Maybe that's why I don't have a long life. Kyle, Bia screamed in his head, clearly angry at his words. But you know what? I hate the fact that I'm not dying because of myself, but because of someone else. So, he cracked his knuckles. I don't think I will find peace until I kill that bastard who placed this artifact in my body. Haley closed his eyes and let out a sigh. I told you not to lose hope. Kyle shook his head. No, I'm not losing hope. I never will. I know I did in the past. But now that I think about it, I don't even know the reason. Was it because of Sen or because my talent was low? Haley couldn't make sense of a lot of things, but just like Bia, he listened to Kyle quietly. At first, after finding out about my bloodline, I wanted to unlock it because I was excited. Then, I aimed to reach a rank higher than SSS plus rank because my knowledge increased. Now I am adding another goal to my list. I am going to get strong, so strong that the artifact can't harm me, and the person who put it in my body will regret ever doing it. Sai, you gave me a panic for a second, but if you are getting strong, I am also gonna put in extra effort. Let's become strong together. Bia unfurled her wings and circled him with resolute eyes. Suddenly, the air around Kyle stirred violently. The boar hurriedly left his shoulder and Bia retracted in another direction. Haley's eyebrow twitched as he watched the cold aura surging around Kyle. He just said he is gonna get stronger and he's already breaking through to the next rank. The duo watched for a minute until the cold aura around Kyle dispersed in different directions. With a faint smile, Kyle pointed his finger towards a nearby floating island. Let's go, we don't have time. Haley sighed but still followed behind him. Bia and Kyle managed to clear 2 treasure islands in just 3 days, all with the goal of getting stronger. Bia felt proud because Kyle didn't take any breaks. He even trained his body reaction speed and sword art. Is this how a parent feels when their laziest child starts walking the right path? However, both Bia and Haley were rendered speechless on the 4th day. While running toward the next treasure island, Kyle spotted a familiar scent. He paused and immediately changed direction. Bia and Haley followed behind him, thinking maybe he found a strong treasure nearby. However, when they caught up to Kyle, they saw he was talking to a familiar girl. Kyle stood above a boulder and gazed down at the pair of amber eyes staring at him. He couldn't help but be surprised because Yue had gotten strong once again. His eyes traveled behind her where a fire was lit. I don't want to disturb you, but when I saw you, I remembered you wanted to say something last time. Yue blinked and let out a faint smile. You found the cure. I just wanted to say be safe. Oh, okay, she pointed back at the fire. I just stopped here after coming out from a treasure island. Do you want to sit together for a while? Bia left Haley's side and hurriedly shook her tiny head in front of Yue. No way, he has a goal to achieve. Yet, a dumbfounded expression appeared on her face when Kyle jumped down from the boulder. He didn't say anything and just gave Yue a quick nod. Bia stared at his back, but then suddenly Kyle gazed back and blinked innocently. It's good to work hard, but we need proper rest as well. Also, don't you feel hungry? Bia's eyes widened as the meaning behind his words dawned on her, and she immediately agreed. The trio sat down beside the fire, forgetting that a certain boar had been watching them with a speechless expression. In the end, when the delicious aroma wafted in the air, Haley also joined them. Well, no one would reject a good meal. Chapter 336, No Reinforcement. Outside the secret realm 2 years later at the western border of Kingdom Escalante, Ratrik's body floated above the border. The old man's white hair swirled gently as he observed the bloody battle unfolding on the other side of the tall and sturdy border. Countless individuals adorned in pale golden armor were locked in a fierce battle with various types of monsters. But it wasn't just them, many people in regular clothes were also fighting. A faint chuckle echoed in the air as Duke Evan thrust his spear into a green six-eyed snake. He raised his head, breathing heavily, and looked at the man fighting beside him. Valenza, I think I won. I killed the 9th S rank monster. Duke Valenza stabbed his axe into the ground, causing a vast area in front of him to shatter into pieces. The monsters cried out, but instead of retreating, they attacked the border with even more ferocity. His forehead was drenched in sweat as he stared back at the man, both amazed and concerned by his audacious actions in such a dangerous situation. Hey, seriously, how do you even have the energy to talk after fighting for 3 days straight? Haya! A sharp cry pierced the air behind the duo, indicating yet another death, but they simply closed their eyes and continued the battle. Ratrik's eyes gleamed with a brilliant light as he gestured toward the countless mages standing in rows above the border. In an instant, the air crackled and a barrage of spells rained down upon the monsters, creating a massive wave of destruction within seconds. Yet it seemed like the monsters were never-ending, continuously pouring out from the dense trees opposite the border. After a minute, the distant trees quivered, and 2 enormous black leopards leaped out from the forest. Their eyes glowed ominously as they surveyed their surroundings, crushing the ground beneath their mighty paws. Evan and Valenza's eyes widened. They were exhausted, but now 2 more formidable monsters had emerged from the dark forest. Nevertheless, they brandished their weapons, charged forward, and launched an attack on the leopards before the monsters could approach the border. Ratrik's eyes narrowed as he swiftly vanished from his position and reappeared before the duo. Let me handle this. With a wave of his hand, a massive layer of earth surged from the ground, crashing into the leopards and sending them hurtling backward. Duke Evan tightened his grip on his weapon, wiping the sweat from his forehead as he looked at the man who had been his rival for as long as he could remember. How much longer can you keep going? Duke Valenza chuckled. Until I can still stand. Without any further words, the duo resumed their fight. They knew that if they faltered, the countless weak citizens behind the border would be the next target of the relentless monsters. After defeating the leopards, Ratrik hurriedly retrieved a communication crystal from his storage ring. A familiar face appeared in the crystal as George delivered another piece of bad news. The northern border is under attack as well. The monsters seem to be endless. Kingdom Whiteland has sent reinforcements and the academies have dispatched their elders and strong students. But if this continues, I don't think we can hold out for more than a week. George clenched his teeth. When will the reinforcements from the west and central continent arrive? When we're already dead? Ratrik's expression turned grim as he rubbed his temples and shook his head. I reached out to the king. Like us, he's also waiting for a response, but neither continent has sent the elite forces they promised before we sent the kids into the ancient realm. He let out a sigh. I thought we had at least 6 to 8 years. Who would have thought the monster lords would attack before the estimated time? This is just the initial monster wave, so I believe we can hold them off for a while. George nodded, knowing they had no choice but to fight until the end. He had even gathered all the remaining kids from the Royal Academy who were willing to fight for their kingdom. Also, what is it? Ratrik's brow furrowed as he sensed hesitation in George's voice. I just received news from Kingdom Tercia. They have 3 borders with the Dark Forest, and with reinforcements from Kingdom Hoken and Kingdom Loringnad, they were able to control the monster wave easily. But suddenly the Dark Mage Ziner attacked one of their borders. Ratrik's eyes narrowed with anger. That bastard, does he have a death wish? Why is he attacking when the East Continent is already in such a dire situation? George's expression turned grim as he informed the old man about the destruction of one of Kingdom Tercia's borders. Also, for some unknown reason, the Dark Mage had reached the SSS rank. Ratrik took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the situation. They were already dealing with 2 monster lords, and now the Dark Mage was causing trouble. He closed the communication crystal with frustration and unleashed his anger on the monsters. If only I could leave, I would definitely put that bastard in his place. At the same time, inside a lavish study room, King Cedric let out a frustrated shout at his first son, Casper. No news again. It seems like the Central and West Continent have no intention of helping us. He grabbed his weapon and armor, prepared to head to the nearest border. Casper sighed and hurriedly took the weapon from his father's hand. I'll go to the border. As the Crown Prince, it's my duty. The initial wave can be handled by Ratrik and the others. You need to focus on reaching the next rank. It'll give us a better chance of survival. The king massaged his temples and sank into his chair. He had been on the verge of a breakthrough for some time now. The violent mana coursing through his body was a small price to pay for protecting his kingdom. He gazed at his older son, who had been training under his trusted aide. Only recently had he discovered that Casper had achieved a very strong rank. First Carcel, and now you too. Both of you certainly know how to surprise me. Casper's smile faded as he thought about the place where his brother was. Father, when is the realm gate opening? Everyone strong in our kingdom is occupied. Who will be there to protect the survivors? Cedric let out a tired sigh. Elder Han has been held back in the central continent due to his disciple, the one with the legendary beast. He had to pay a hefty sum to leave, but because he was reluctant to part with his wealth, King Astalion forced him to guide the realm gate with the other array masters. He recently contacted me and said that he saw some movements in the air. Maybe the gate will open in 2 or 3 weeks. Casper nodded with concerned eyes. I just hope Carcel is safe. He would have grown into a remarkable young man. King Cedric's smile was bittersweet, indeed. Once he returns, I will properly discipline him for always doing as he pleases. However, deep down, both of them knew that Carcel's chances of returning alive were slim. Chapter 337. No one made it out alive. Elder Han looked up at the bright sky with a gloomy expression. The land surrounding him was desolate and the air was hot. Beads of sweat dripped down his forehead and soaked his clothes. A faint growl emanated from his stomach, and he glanced over at the numerous tents scattered around him. In the midst of the tents, the other array masters were gathered, enjoying their meals and discussing a new array they had recently discovered. He let out a sigh and waved his hand dismissively when one of the array masters offered him to join them. Not right now, I'm keeping an eye on the realm gate. Recently I felt some sort of movements in the air. The array master left him alone, but in the distance he scoffed. None of them had sensed anything from the realm gate, so how could he? If Elder Han noticed the array master's displeasure, he didn't say anything. His gaze shifted towards the realm gate. It was heavily guarded by strong soldiers from Kingdom Solticia, stationed both in front of the gate and around the tents. They kept a close watch on those who stayed behind from the other continents and kingdoms, prepared to welcome back any survivors. With a sigh, he jumped down from the rocky bed where he had been sitting for a few hours. The situation back in the kingdom isn't good. I want to leave, but I know with all the strong individuals busy, I need to stay here. I have first-hand knowledge that both the central continent and west continent have been watching from the sidelines. They won't offer assistance until the east continent weakens. Ultimately, when the continent is on the brink of collapse, they'll present their demands. Also, something's wrong with King Astalion. The last time I saw him, he was talking to his shadow, but as soon as he noticed me, he quickly changed the subject. He thought about Kyle, and a solemn expression appeared on his face. I hope he and the little phoenix make it out alive. Otherwise, who's going to pay the money? After all, I'm just an old poor man. As he headed towards the Kingdom Escalante tent, a couple of muscular guards welcomed him with polite expressions. But just as he was about to step inside and call it a day, the ground beneath him rumbled with a deafening roar. Elder Han's eyes widened and he quickly whipped his head around. Everyone in front of the realm gate abandoned their tents and gathered around, their eyes fixed on the gate as it began to tremble. Dark wisps of smoke curled out from the gate, and the air crackled with electricity. The crowd held their breath in anticipation, knowing that the realm gate was about to open. However, to their surprise, after a minute, everything fell eerily silent once again. What's going on?" someone shouted from the crowd. And in no time, the air was filled with a chorus of worried voices. The array masters panicked. They instantly surveyed the symbols drawn around the gate to check if something was wrong with them. Elder Han's figure flashed and he appeared in front of the gate. He roughly pushed back an old man and hurriedly examined the symbols, but his expression hardened when he found nothing amiss. He massaged his aching temples and stared at the gate. What the hell is going on? Suddenly, a wave of dread washed over him. Just like him, the faces of the people around the realm gate darkened. Amidst the chaotic atmosphere, an elderly man from the west continent spoke up. "Don't tell me no one made it out alive." His words landed like a lightning bolt, and once again the air grew silent, but no one dared to believe his words. They knew the realm was dangerous, but how could not a single person have survived? At the same time, without realizing the panic he had caused outside, Riss couldn't help but let out a silent snarl. 1, 2, 3. I know my memory has problems, but how the hell am I supposed to inject mana into this thing? He muttered, tapping the large platform engraved with countless symbols with his tail in frustration. Haley growled irritably and pushed him back. "Stop, just stop, don't touch anything, the gate will open on its own. Damn it, where's the guardian? This lizard is driving me crazy." Riss clicked his tongue and reluctantly stepped back. He glanced at the numerous figures soaring through the sky. "You're shouting at me as if I stepped on your tail. Let's go, we need to say goodbye to the kiddos, who knows when we'll see them again." Haley snorted but followed him nonetheless. The duo flew across the sky, and after a minute they spotted the illusionary old man. The old man gazed at the many individuals floating midair, and a smile spread across his face. Almost everyone who had survived in the realm had reached an impressive rank, not to mention the group of kids he had been keeping an eye on. They had exceeded his expectations, especially the ones with the divine artifacts. He chuckled and raised his voice, causing a thunderous announcement to echo throughout the realm. "Get ready, kids, it's time to leave." In the distance, Nine looked around at the numerous treasure islands with a reluctant and sad expression. He flew across the sky, deliberately emanating his powerful S+ rank aura. "I've reached the limits of my talent, otherwise I would have been the strongest to come out of this realm." A snort sounded behind him. He turned around and raised an eyebrow at Sinon, the winged demi-human floating behind him. "Haha, don't tell me you want a one-on-one. Remember, you're just a tad weaker than me." Sinon clicked his tongue and cracked his knuckles with an evil smile. "We're the same rank, so stop or else you'll regret it." Nine shut his mouth with a loud click. Soon, more and more familiar faces, along with a few unfamiliar ones, appeared around them. He frowned when he noticed that a few faces were missing from the crowd. "Hey, where are Jian, Carcel, Alec, and even Kyle? They're not here." Sinan's expression turned blank as he let out a sigh. "Last I remember, the trio went to test their strength against someone named Gil. Jian mentioned they were going to beat him. I don't know who this unlucky person is, but I hope he doesn't suffer too much. As for Kyle, I have no idea." Nine blinked and after a few seconds let out a trembling laugh. "Are you kidding me? They went to beat Gil." Lara and Mia appeared behind him, exchanging glances. Mia tapped his shoulder. "Yeah, Carcel told me the same thing. Who is this Gil anyway?" Nine's expression turned pale. He crossed his legs midair and waved his hand towards everyone floating around him. "He's someone who could crush us with just a finger. So let's hope the trio comes back alive." Everyone around him started laughing, thinking he was joking, but seeing his serious expression, they fell silent. Kelvin immediately let out a worried sigh. "Wait, I'll try contacting Jian." Yet no matter how much he tried to send signals, the red-haired man ignored him. Kelvin stared at the communication device with wide eyes, recalling that the last time he contacted Jian, the latter said he would do the same and ignore him. "He's getting back at me even though I told him I couldn't share my location because I was stuck in a dangerous place." In the end, they all got together and started waiting for the old man to open the exit to the realm. The old man appeared in front of the crowd, his gaze shifting between the floating people and those standing on the ground. His voice, filled with serenity, echoed in all directions. "Fear not, all the living outsiders in this realm will be teleported out as soon as the exit opens." Chapter 338. Now it's my turn. The air crackled as a massive wave of fire crashed into a wounded figure kneeling in the distance. Gil coughed up blood but quickly spread his wings, causing the flames to scatter in every direction. Alec and Carcel cursed simultaneously, wiping the sweat from their foreheads. The duo hovered in midair, their eyes locked on the man who was laughing maliciously before them. Alec ran his fingers through his hair and let out a frustrated sigh. "Jian, why are you relying solely on fire skills? We're strong, but the intense heat is becoming overwhelming." Jian tilted his head, his shoulder-length hair swaying gently behind his back as he let out an evil chuckle. Just like Alec and Carcel, his clothes were drenched with sweat. "To be honest, I'm not sure why, but after entering the realm, I only found fire-type skills. Just endure it." Alec clicked his tongue and raised his hand. "Now it's my turn." Jian and Carcel immediately pulled back, having had their fill. But what happened next sent chills down their spines. Alec's eyes dilated as he whipped his head around. "Where is Gil?" The trio hurriedly went to the place where the man had been kneeling just moments ago, but he was nowhere to be found. Alec sucked in a deep breath. They had been beating up Gil with so much confidence because the Realm Guardian had injured him badly. Also, the Guardian placed a restraint on his body, but no matter what, the man was still a pseudo-divine rank individual. Jian let out a distressed cry. "Oh my gosh, what's gonna happen now? The Guardian's gonna punish us." They gazed at each other and immediately started searching the land. After just a few seconds, the hair on Alec's back stood up and he jumped forward. Before the others could react, a beam tore through the place he had been floating just moments ago. The ground blasted out and a huge cloud rose in the sky. Jian instinctively grabbed Carcel's arm. He wanted to shout, but the golden-haired man closed his mouth and pushed him away. "Get away!" Immediately an evil, almost broken voice echoed through the air. Ill you all." Gil's whole body was riddled with wounds, but he was still stronger than these ants. He would have already killed them if not for the restraint placed on his body. Regardless, it's okay now because he has finally broken free. He raised his hand with a twisted smile on his bloodied face, and another beam shot out, heading directly toward Jian. Jian freaked out and jumped in another direction in midair. Alec and Carcel both followed suit. Gil crackled an evil laugh, but he choked on his saliva due to his sore throat. "Kek, ki jump, p, jump. How long will you jump?" Countless glowing lights appeared behind him as he used the divine energy present within his body without caring about the potential harm it could cause. Alec's expression hardened. He unsheathed the glowing sword from his waist and pointed it at Gil. "You think we're scared?" But he couldn't finish his sentence because Giant and Carcel started flying away in different directions. Alec blinked in disbelief. He turned his head towards Gil and understood why the duo ran away. The glowing lights behind Gil transformed into dangerously powerful beams. Instantly, the beams zoomed in toward Alec. In a split second, Alec made a decision and rushed behind Giant. "Wait for me, you jerks." Behind him, the beams crashed into the ground, shattering everything into pieces. Dust clouds filled the air, making their vision blurry. Giant coughed and waved his hand with an ugly expression. "What the hell does this guy still have so much strength for?" he growled, but the trio didn't stop. It was only when they were far away from the chaos that they gathered and narrowed their eyes at the billowing dust clouds. Giant placed his hand on Alec's shoulder, his expression grave. "Hey Alec, why don't you go and check if he's done for after using such a powerful attack?" Alec raised an eyebrow and swatted Giant's hand away. "Why don't you go first? Don't worry, I'll be right behind you." Carcel shook his head with a faint smile. Suddenly, a massive tremor shook the air around them. Giant's eyes widened in an instant. "Don't tell me he still has strength for another attack." Alec's forehead became sweaty as he looked at them. "Hey, but the voice is coming from behind, not from Gil's direction." The trio immediately whipped their heads back, and their souls nearly flew out of their bodies at the sight before them. In the distance, a familiar figure with silver hair was sprinting towards them. But it wasn't the running figure that scared them, it was the horde of growling monsters chasing after him. The ground beneath them shook violently as the monsters drew closer and closer. They wanted to fly away, but the countless flying monsters in the sky made it impossible to even consider. Giant's face turned pale as he let out a barely audible laugh. "I think I'm imagining things." "No, you're not," Alex screamed from behind and pulled him towards the ground. Flying was not an option or they would meet their demise. Just like the silver-haired man, they started running across the barren land. Kyle's eyes gleamed with a glint as he spotted the trio. In a flash, he disappeared from his spot and reappeared beside Giant, scaring the living daylights out of him. Giant shot him a glare. "How the heck did you get involved with so many monsters? Did you steal their kids or something?" Kyle gave him a sly smile and raised his hand, revealing a beautiful silver sword shining under the sunlight, covered in a white cloth. "It's been a while since I wanted a sword, but I had to venture into a volcano to find this one. Haley warned me that the place was filled with monsters, but I didn't think it would be a big deal. Turns out I was wrong." Giant rolled his eyes. "Just wrong." Alec and Carcel overheard their conversation and exchanged bitter smiles. All this trouble for a sword. Suddenly, Giant realized that the little birdie Bia was missing. "Where's Bia?" Kyle let out an "oh" and looked back. "Maybe hiding somewhere far away." Giant blinked, then he let out a pleased chuckle. "Stay strong, bro." Before he could finish his sentence, Kyle flashed him another smile and vanished. "You bastard, wait, my mana is low, I can't fight so many monsters." Alec, Giant, and Carcel sprinted through the area, muttering curses under their breath. In the distance, Kyle's figure materialized out of thin air, and his eyes narrowed as he caught sight of a familiar injured winged man. The man was kneeling on the ground, with messy hair and bloodied clothes. Gil raised his head and his eyes met Kyle's midair. Sparks flew in the air and the winged man bared his teeth at the human. He raised his trembling hand to send another beam at Kyle, but the silver-haired man vanished into thin air. Gil let out a startled cry, but before he could process anything, Kyle appeared behind him. Kyle raised his finger and quickly drew a symbol in the air before smacking it against Gil's neck. Immediately, Gil's eyes fluttered shut, and his body dropped to the ground with a loud thud. "Sleep for a while," Kyle mused and narrowed his eyes at the countless monsters edging closer to him. His eyes glowed with a faint blue light as he whispered under his breath. Ice Domain, Chapter 339. "It's time to go back." The air suddenly grew cold, and a translucent dome materialized out of thin air, enveloping everything around Kyle in a chilly embrace. Countless icicles formed in the air and thick clouds gathered. Giant's eyes widened as he stepped into the towering dome, but to his surprise, the path in front of him cleared. He took a deep breath, only to cough from the intense cold. His gaze locked onto the figure of Kyle with an aggrieved expression, and he dashed towards him. After him, Alec and Carcel also entered the dome and hurriedly ran towards Kyle. The ground beneath them trembled violently, and all eyes turned to Kyle, before staring at the unconscious body of Gil lying behind him. Alec's eyebrow twitched. They had been locked in a battle with Gil for 2 days, unable to kill him due to the divine energy present within his body. Yet Kyle had effortlessly rendered him unconscious. He so badly wanted to ask how but controlled the urge, knowing the situation was too dangerous. Giant held his breath. "Now what do we have to fight? If we give it our all, I think we can take them down." Kyle raised his head, his eyes narrowing at the approaching monsters. No, there are too many of them, and the exit to the realm is about to open. We're running out of time. He kicked off the ground and started hovering in midair. Alec, Carcel, and Giant exchanged glances and quickly followed behind. Under their gaze, the countless icicles floating inside the dome shot out toward the monsters with a speed invisible to the naked eye. Kyle sucked in a deep breath. Hope this works. He raised his finger and started scribing symbols in the air, shocking the trio beside him. The symbols glowed and instantly trembled. Kyle's finger shook, and he cursed when the symbols dispersed in the air. He raised his finger again and scribbled the symbols once more, but they vanished again. Guys, use your strongest skills to distract the monsters. Just half a minute is enough. The trio immediately nodded and hurriedly used the remaining mana in their bodies to divert the attention of the monsters. However, they were overwhelmed. Obviously, they were tired after fighting Gil, and now their mana was running low. After the fourth try, Kyle's eyes lit up. He smiled at the faint glowing circle opposite him, which grew bigger and bigger before transforming into a large round portal. He let out a shout towards Alec and jumped into the portal. Hurry! Alec stared back, his eyes widening with disbelief. He sucked in a deep breath and shouted at Giant and Carcel before following behind Kyle. Giant dodged an earth spike thrown at him by a large turtle and immediately entered the portal. Carcel followed suit. Alec's head buzzed, and the moment he emerged from the portal, he retched and emptied the contents of his stomach. Giant and Carcel were in the same condition. The trio glared at the silver-haired man standing opposite them, but they were distracted when a loud rumble sounded behind them. They immediately whipped their heads around and saw that the place they had left was just opposite the tall mountain where they had appeared. Three pairs of speechless eyes turned towards Kyle, but he shrugged his shoulders. I need a lot of time if I want to create a portal for a very long-distance travel. Giant slumped down on the ground and let out a tired sigh. Alec chuckled and sat down beside him. However, they were not able to rest because countless tears formed in the sky, staining the clear sky with cracks. Carcel hummed softly. It seems it's time to leave. Alec's eyes crinkled into a smile. Yes, it's time to go back. Giant also let out a smile. Contrary to the serene atmosphere, Kyle's expression was deep as he stared at the cracks. He rubbed his chest with a bitter smile. Indeed, it's time to leave, but I am still not strong enough. I hope the artifact stays dormant for a few more years. Guys, I am going to fetch Bia. Kyle left, but Alec noticed his behavior and knitted his brows. He narrowed his eyes and immediately used the system appraisal skill. His mouth opened wide when the shocking system panel flashed in front of his eyes. Name, Kyle Ohen, race, human, rank, SSS, special, unknown, error. Trying to find the cause, loading, error, no more information provided. To know further information, the host needs to be a whole rank higher than the target. Alec gazed at his status and let out a faint chuckle. Just recently he broke through to SS plus rank. It was all possible because, for the past 2 years, he worked hard day and night, but it seemed someone was working even harder than him. Tusk, just when am I going to be a whole rank higher than him? He glanced at Giant and Carcel. The duo had also reached SS rank recently. If we all stay together, maybe we will be able to face all the hardships in the future. But first, I need to find the person damaging the planet's core to buy more time for everyone to grow stronger. He let out a sigh. It's good that he received the information from Haley a year ago. Or else he would have stayed in the dark for a long time. Outside the realm, Elder Hand's face grew paler with each passing second. He fiddled with the symbols, but the realm gate remained silent. No way, he screamed in his head, unwilling to believe that no one had survived. The array masters around him were also in a state of panic. However, just as despair filled the faces of those around him, the realm gate trembled once again and wisps of smoke emerged. Elder Hand let out a cry of relief and squeezed his eyes shut. I'm done for if I receive another panic attack. I can't take it. He messaged his temples and slumped to the ground. The array masters around him hurriedly dragged him away from the realm gate to prevent any further issues. The sky above the realm gate darkened, and a faint bright light flashed. However, instead of the familiar circular opening, the entire realm gate came crashing down with a loud rumble. The crowd's mouths dropped open in shock as the earth trembled, causing multiple cracks to form everywhere. In an instant, sparks of dark electric current buzzed out from the realm gate with lightning-fast speed, and a person with brown hair flew out. The crowd held their breath as they gazed at the first survivor emerging from the realm. Indeed, he looked incredibly powerful. Nine's expression turned smug upon hearing the faint, shocked exclamations around him, but he quickly composed himself with a solemn expression and flew into the middle of the crowd. This deity shall— His sentence was cut short when Sinan's figure crashed into him, causing him to lose his balance. The two of them crashed to the ground with painful groans. Nine pushed the winged demi-human away from his body and squeezed his eyes shut. There, my perfect image just shattered into a million pieces. The crowd stared at the two individuals, but in the next second they gasped as countless bright lights flashed out from the realm gate. Their shock increased because the number of survivors grew with each passing second. Elder Han was almost brought to tears with relief when he saw many familiar faces following Nine. Lara and Mia floated midair, gazing around at the few old men floating or standing on the ground. The girls instantly spotted Elder Han and hurriedly made their way towards him. While the countless people waiting for the survivors rejoiced with happiness, the guards from Kingdom Soltitia stationed around the realm gate panicked at the increasing numbers. Immediately, a few of them vanished into thin air to inform King Astalion. Chapter 340, Debt. King Astalion spat out the drink he had been sipping as he stared at the guard kneeling across from him in disbelief. "What did you say?" He blinked once twice and then massaged his temples. The shadow lurking in the darkness emerged from behind him and let out an excited snarl. "Go, go. The kids must have found the divine essence with the help of the map. Hurry." Astalion snorted, but after tossing the cup in his hand aside, he vanished from the luxurious hall, heading straight toward the realm gate. Just like Astalion, the strongest individuals in the West Continent received the news from their people stationed at the realm gate. They immediately left their kingdoms to proudly welcome the youngsters. Even the Queen of the Sea Continent was shocked to hear that 70% of their people had returned alive. She burst into laughter and hastily instructed her strongest warriors to go and welcome the kids, especially her daughter, Seraphine. Similarly, the various kings in the East Continent rejoiced at the joyful news. Unfortunately, due to the circumstances, they were unable to send any strong individuals. In the end, after extensive discussions among all the kingdoms, King Foron himself set out to pick up the kids. Unaware of the chaos they were causing, more and more people emerged from the realm gate with each passing second. Regius, Lucas, and Sen, the trio, also floated out from the gate. Regius had a smug expression on his face as he waved at the old man from the Elven Kingdom. He landed confidently in front of the old man, ready to boast, but his smile froze when two handsome figures landed in front of him. Faith and Niam stared back at Regius with raised eyebrows, challenging him to boast in their presence. The old man from Kingdom Tertia cried out with joy when he saw the three men. He had been receiving death threats from their families, warning that if anything happened to their heirs, they would first kill him and then destroy the realm gate. He almost dropped to his knees when he saw a beautiful figure floating out from the gate. Yue's amber eyes shone brightly as she looked around and made her way towards the old man. Niam, Regius, and Faith immediately tried to sense her rank, but they were dumbfounded when they sensed nothing. The trio exchanged bitter smiles as they wondered just how much stronger she had become. After Yue, Zhe also appeared, and she let out a proud smirk when she spotted her father standing amidst the crowd. Elder Han had a smile on his face as he stared at the realm gate. However, after a few minutes, the countless lights coming out from the gate suddenly stopped. His smile faltered slightly as he wondered where Kyle and Alec were, and to add to his concern, Prince Carcel had yet to come out as well. But before he could have another panic attack, thinking that the strongest individuals had perished, three familiar figures stepped out from the realm gate. Giant stretched his body and ruffled his hair with a yawn. "Man, I'm tired. It's good that we could easily step out, unlike the others who were tossed out." Alec smiled back at him, and then his gaze wandered toward the gorgeous figure standing beside Elder Han. Just as he remembered, Lara's face remained expressionless, but her eyes had softened, and it seemed like she was even conversing with the others. He tapped Giant on the shoulder. "I'm leaving." "See you later." Giant stared at him as he vanished into the crowd. With a mischievous glint, Giant raised his arm to place it on Carcel's shoulder, but before he could, Carcel also disappeared into the crowd. In the end, Giant clicked his tongue and started walking toward Kelvin, who had been glaring at him since he emerged from the realm. Giant let out a hesitant chuckle as he tried to explain why he couldn't receive Kelvin's signal, but Kelvin ignored him as if he were thin air. Amidst the bustling atmosphere, King Astalion's figure appeared in the sky. He scanned the crowd and immediately spotted Lucas and the mermaid princess. The shadow hiding behind him let out a relieved sigh. Now he was sure they had obtained the divine essence. Regardless, he controlled the urge to pounce on them because there were too many people around. Astalion broke into a polite smile. His loud voice echoed in the air. "Welcome back. I am happy to see so many survivors." A few strong guards appeared behind him, carrying golden chests filled with mana stones, gold coins, and all types of luxurious things one could expect in life. However, before he could announce that the gates of Kingdom Soltitia were open for those who wanted to come, a few more old men and women from the West Continent and Sea Continent appeared behind him. They scoffed at his actions, clearly mocking him because how the hell did he think he would be able to snatch their people under their noses? While the atmosphere was heated, a faint rumble shook the air. Instantly, all eyes turned to the realm gate that had been quiet for a while now. Alec blinked, glanced at Carcel, and let out a chuckle. He sure knows how to become the center of attention. Lara and Mia shook their heads with smiles. They all knew that now he was strong enough to handle everything, even if he attracted the attention of others. Under the crowd's eyes, a spark of fire emerged from the realm gate, followed by a huge majestic phoenix that soared through the sky, painting the once cloudy sky with crimson. Istalion's eyes dilated when he sensed the phoenix's rank. She's already SS plus rank. The beautiful phoenix was not alone. Just like Alec, Giant, and Carcel, Kyle stepped out from the realm. However, unlike them, his clothes were spotless. He wore an emotionless expression as he straightened his shirt and gazed at the phoenix. Bia. Instantly, under the stunned eyes of the crowd, the phoenix gracefully fluttered her wings and dived down toward him. She decreased her size and obediently sat on his shoulder. Hey, what about the two moths? Kyle hummed. As I said, there's no need to worry about them. Now that everyone is out, they should quietly live inside the realm. Behind him, the realm gate trembled before the light started vanishing. Faint white sparks flew out from the realm gate, and the opening closed just as fast as it crashed down. Kyle's silver hair swirled gently as he spotted the old man and started walking toward him. Instantly, the people around him parted to give him enough space. Master, it's been a while. Elder Hand stared at the handsome man in front of him and broke out into laughter. He wanted to scream, "Look, this is my disciple." Even though he felt proud, he restrained the urge to express it. In the distance, Istalion's ears perked up when he heard the word master. An evil smirk appeared on his face as he gazed at the people from Kingdom Escalante. I think nobody should leave until Elder Hand pays his debt, which has increased over the past 2 years. Chapter 341, Two Monster Lords. Kyle raised his head and stared directly at the man, narrowing his eyes at the air behind him. He wasn't sure if his senses were correct, so he activated his skill, Scent Perception, to sense the faint thing lurking behind Istallion. The shadow behind Istallion was startled when it sensed someone gazing at it. It glanced at Kyle and immediately vanished into thin air, trying not to expose itself. Kyle's brow furrowed as he smelled the various scents in the air. However, he confirmed his suspicions that something strong and dark was present behind Istallion. He started floating in the air and stopped right in front of Istallion and the guards holding the golden chests. Why and how much does Master need to pay you? As he spoke, an extremely cold aura spread through the air, making those weaker than S rank shiver. Alec and Carcel glanced at each other and quickly left the ground, floating beside Kyle in midair. Alec raised his brow. Let's hear it. Why does Elder Hand have to pay you? After the duo, many figures rose into the air. All the people who knew Kyle appeared around him. He was already strong enough, but they just wanted to stand beside him. Istallion's expression darkened, and the old men and women from the other continents immediately distanced themselves to avoid being associated with him. He chuckled, very well. Instead of stepping back, he immediately told Kyle how Elder Hand had opened the realm gate before the intended time and wasted many resources. Kyle blinked and gazed at his master floating in the distance. On his left, Giant cracked his knuckles, ready to put the man in his place. Can't he see that he was alone with a few guards and they outnumbered him? Yet Kyle surprised him with his next words. How much? Istallion's eyes narrowed slightly, and he deliberately increased the amount tenfold. The faces of the old men floating in the distance paled when they heard the amount. They glanced at each other because none of them had even seen it before. Elder Hand cried out and pointed his trembling finger at the man. You. But he wasn't able to complete his sentence because Kyle agreed instantly as if the amount was nothing. Istallion scoffed at his calm expression, but in the next second Kyle tossed 2 storage rings toward him. The man's eyes dilated as he saw the rings coming at him. He immediately grabbed the rings, but to the shock of the crowd, he was pushed back midair. He stared at Kyle with disbelief. Just how strong does one have to be to startle him? He was at the pinnacle of mortal strength. He was the only SSS plus rank in the whole planet. Disregarding the stunned eyes, Kyle raised his brow. One of the rings is divine grade, the other is supreme grade. I believe the things inside are enough to keep a whole kingdom afloat for 50 years, even if they have nothing. Also, I am overlooking the strange being behind you because I remember I owe you one. An emotionless voice echoed inside Istallion's head. It took a minute for him to completely digest Kyle's words, and when he did, he was rooted to his spot. The word divine grade echoed in his head. No one should know about this word, but seeing how easily the silver-haired man opposite him tossed the rings toward him, it seemed divine grade was nothing for him. Istallion let out a shuddering breath when he glanced inside the rings. They were not filled, but the things inside were indeed enough to keep a whole kingdom afloat for 50 years. He raised his hand, signaling his guards to retreat, and gazed at Kyle one final time before abruptly departing, leaving the crowd in a state of shock. Kyle's lips trickled upward as he stared at Istallion's retreating figure. He gazed back, and before anyone could offer him treasures to join their kingdom, he immediately entered the Kingdom Escalante tent. Elder Han appeared behind him, gazing at him with an incredible expression. Kyle nodded at the old man. Master, I want to go home, but I believe it's better if we all go back together. Elder Hand gave him a quick nod. Don't worry, King Foron is here, he has bought a big ship. All the people from Kingdom Escalante will go back together. After just half an hour, they boarded the ship and it started floating in the air. King Foron was tempted to go and talk with Alec, Kyle, Carcel, and all the strong kids from the other kingdoms. Who wouldn't want more allies? But he was surprised to find out that both Kelvin and Giant already knew them. As the ship soared, all the older people gathered in a closed room to figure out how to tell the kids about the monster lords. They even put up a big array around the room so no one could overhear. When Elder Han arrived in front of the room, a little figure appeared on his shoulder out of nowhere. It was Bia. The old man looked at her and blinked. Bia blinked back. He smiled faintly, but one could tell he was sweating because now he knew for sure that Bia could communicate with Kyle. What are you doing here, little one? Go play somewhere else. He waved his hand to dismiss her. But then a calm and low voice sent shivers down his spine. Old man, I know you've become smarter in my absence. Kyle and the others asked me to spy, so just quietly take me with you. Don't worry about the others, just tell them I can't understand. Elder Han wiped his sweaty forehead and pushed the door open. Instantly, many eyes turned towards him, some curious gazes traveled toward Bia. However, Elder Han immediately assured them with a dead serious expression that she couldn't understand a word. As they began their discussion, unaware that their words were being heard by the kids, Kyle leaned back in his chair in another room. Two monster lords, Alec and all his friends around him widened their eyes, taking in the information from their spy. Chapter 342, Maybe I Imagined It. After a heated argument, King Foron stormed out of the room. Following his orders, a group of older men quickly gathered the young ones. With the circumstances, they couldn't keep things hidden from the kids. As the floating ship approached the East Continent, King Foron stood before the group of youngsters. Many other older individuals and elder hands stood silently by his side. He cleared his throat, wearing a solemn expression to quiet down the faint whispers and voices. Once again, he felt a swell of pride seeing the number of people who had returned alive. His eyes flickered with various emotions. The kids had just survived such a big hurdle, and now he and the others were about to put them in danger again. I'm really proud of all of you. It's amazing to see so many talented people right here. I know you all want to go back and see your families and friends, but I have some news, and it's not good, I'm afraid. He paused for a moment and rubbed his temples. The tension in the air heightened because, unlike Kyle and his friends, nobody knew what news he was referring to. Your people, your families, they need you. The dark forest, which had been quiet for so long, has produced two new monster lords. As soon as his words fell, a heavy silence enveloped the ship. It took a moment for everyone to process the gravity of the situation. Then, a chorus of shocked gasps filled the air. King Foron was about to speak further, but Alec, who had been quietly observing from a corner with his arms crossed, raised his hand. Have the two monster lords already emerged? What's the current situation? I don't know about the others, but I'm ready to fight. All eyes turned to him in an instant. Carcel tapped his shoulder with a raised eyebrow. Don't forget to count me in. Mia and Lara followed suit, expressing their determination. Only if Nine was here, he would have been the first to join them, but he was forced to go with Seraphine. After them, Regius, Yue, Kelvin, and Giant stepped forward. She let out a chuckle and raised her spear. Who do you think we are? We're not afraid of some monster lords. Their voices were joined by many others. At first, they were hesitant, but they found courage when Alec voiced his resolve. After all, the blue-haired man had helped them a lot in the secret realm. King Foron blinked. It was clear from Alec's reaction that the news was not new to him. Instantly, his eyes traveled to the brown-haired old man standing by his side. Elder Han let out a chuckle and waved his hand to shoo away the little bird sitting on his shoulder. He wanted to salvage the situation by pretending he knew nothing, but suddenly King Foron let out a chuckle. He looked at Alec and nodded quickly. Indeed, the kids had grown up. You all should rest for now. I understand that you're eager to know more, but we will be heading to Kingdom Escalante, where King Cedric will provide all the answers. His eyes traveled to the silver-haired man standing quietly in the distance. For a while, Kyle hadn't said anything. As if sensing his gaze, a pair of brilliant green eyes stared back at him. Kyle hummed softly and waved his hand, prompting Bia to come toward him. Alec turned his head toward Kyle with knitted brows. He hadn't heard anything from Kyle. Kyle. Instantly, all eyes turned to Kyle, waiting for his answer. They were all sure he would join. After all, like Alec, he had helped many of them and was the strongest. Yet after a few seconds of silence, the crowd grew restless. But before anyone could say anything, Kyle let out a sigh. I will join as well. However, I would like to go and check on my family first. Afterward, I'll come join you guys. Alec smiled and immediately gave him an okay sign. After an hour, when the ship entered the boundary of Kingdom Escalante, Kyle talked to Elder Han, saying that he would just go for a while and come back. The old man thought for a second but agreed. He watched as Kyle started floating, but he didn't leave. Elder Han blinked in confusion, but before he could voice it out, Kyle raised his finger and started scribing in the air. Elder Han's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He stared at the glowing symbols in shock. Only when Kyle was done did he snap out of his shock, but he was a tad bit late because directly support the authors on web novel. Another voice called out to Kyle before him. Kyle turned his head back to look at the beautiful figure floating behind him. Yue tossed a communication crystal toward him. He snapped out of his shock, but he was a tad bit late because another voice called out to Kyle before him. With a faint smile, it's because nobody has any way to stay in touch with you, so take it with you. Kyle grabbed the crystal. The symbols he drew merged together to form a portal in the air. Immediately, he tossed the little bird on his shoulder inside the portal. He ignored the voice in his head and glanced at Yue for a second before he also entered the portal, but she heard his faint words clearly. It's not like I asked for an explanation. Yue's ears twitched and she let out a chuckle. Over the past 2 years in the realm, she had bumped into Kyle many times. Of course, she was a little mad because he and Bia would only show up when they wanted to eat something delicious. However, the fact that now Kyle can easily speak his mind in front of her made her happy. She snapped out of her thoughts when she heard a distressed voice beside her. Elder Han had one of his hands in the air, and his face wore a blank expression. The old man let out a bitter smile as he gazed into the distance. Just what has the world come to? He can already draw symbols in the air. Or maybe I imagined it. Chapter 343, You are finally back. Bia cursed in her mind when she saw Kyle's figure emerging from the portal. She harumphed angrily and narrowed her eyes at the city below. Kyle's eyes traveled downward. He could have easily used instant teleportation to get home in a few minutes, but because of Bia, he knew he couldn't. Let's go, he dove down with lightning-fast speed, leaving his spot in a blur. Bia clicked her tongue and followed closely behind. You're just a tad bit stronger than me, but why is your speed so fast? As Kyle picked up speed, the air rushed against his skin. It was cold and the air pressure was almost overwhelming, but he only felt a gentle tickle on his skin. He raised an eyebrow at Bia's words and glanced at his stats from the corner of his eye. Stats, name, Kyle Bloodline. Celestial rank, SSS strength, SSS mana, SSS plus agility, SSS talent, SSS plus rank luck. Skills, just a little, I suppose. Bia rolled her eyes at his words. She wanted to boast that she had already reached SS plus rank in just 2 years. But when she thought about the resources Kyle had generously provided and how he was stronger, she chose to remain quiet. After just 10 minutes, the duo reached a small building in an area that should have been bustling with people, but for some reason it was strangely quiet. They had arrived in the capital city, right in front of the house where Kyle had left his family. Kyle took a deep breath and surveyed the house before landing in front of the gate. As he reached for the gate, he heard a familiar voice calling him from behind. Who's there? He turned around and was surprised to see the familiar figure of Butler Ian. The old man's face was more wrinkled and his brows furrowed as he examined Kyle from head to toe. Who are you, young man? Butler Ian paused and blinked when he noticed Bia sitting on Kyle's shoulder. This little bird. It looks very similar. His mouth hung open as he snapped his eyes to Kyle's face. A familiar smile played at the corner of the silver-haired man standing opposite him. Unlike before, Kyle had grown taller, and with his eyes, hair, and pale skin, he looked like a completely different person. Ian sucked in a deep breath, his face filled with shock. Before he could voice his thoughts, Kyle surprised him even more by giving him a light pat on the shoulder. How have you been, old man? It's been a while. Ian's eyes moistened as he heard the familiar voice of the youngest child of the house. It took him a few seconds to believe that the person in front of him was really Kyle, but when he did, he opened his arms with a smile. Kyle let out a chuckle and embraced him in a warm hug. As they chatted, Butler Ian quickly opened the gate and they entered the house. They walked for a while, and Kyle was pleased to see that the house was adorned with decent furniture and a few more male workers. It seemed like things had changed since he left. After passing through a small corridor, the butler stopped in front of a room. He knocked on the door and waited. Kyle glanced at the closed door, and a few seconds later his father replied that he was busy and shouldn't be disturbed. Butler Ian smiled bitterly as he looked at him. He's been like this ever since the other 2 masters left to fight for the kingdom. Kyle sighed and rubbed his temples. When did they leave? A few days ago, the royal palace announced that they were recruiting people who want to participate in the battle against the monster lord, and both of them immediately applied. With a nod, Kyle pushed the door open and stepped inside. Immediately, Baron Ohan, who was standing in front of a desk, looked back with a frown. Didn't I say not to disturb him? He paused when he saw that instead of Ian, an unfamiliar man had entered the room. Ohan narrowed his eyes at him, but then he suddenly let out a surprised gasp. Kyle, is it you? Kyle blinked, surprised that his father had recognized him. He opened his mouth to reply, but before he could, his father hurriedly made his way toward him and embraced him tightly. Oh, my child, you're finally back. It's been so long, I almost thought Tears welled up in his eyes as he gently patted Kyle's back. A warm feeling filled Kyle's chest as he let out a soft sigh. I'm sorry for worrying you so much, Dad, I'm fine. After a while, Ohan forced him to sit down and quickly summoned a few servants to prepare a special meal. After all, his son had returned after such a long time. Kyle smiled and allowed his father to do as he pleased. Ohan asked him questions about his time in the realm. He had been aware that Kyle had entered the ancient realm. However, he knew that his son had grown up. That's why, even though he was worried and initially wanted to scold Kyle when he heard from Elder Han that he had entered such a dangerous place, he let it go. The three of you surely know how to make me worry. Now you're back and the other two are gone. Baron Ohan let out a sigh and shook his head. He immediately took Kyle into the dining hall. The table was adorned with a wide array of delicious dishes. Even though Kyle didn't have much of an appetite, he ate and encouraged the old man to eat as well. After all, he had heard from the butler that his father hadn't been eating properly for a while now. Kyle let out a yawn after he finished eating. He glanced at Bia, who was still devouring a meat dish and couldn't help but chuckle. He looked at his father and gently tapped his shoulder. Don't worry, Dad, Ray and Neon are both strong. Also, I'll go check on them. A mischievous glint flashed in his eyes. Well, I can't wait to see their faces when I tell them I've reached the SSS rank. Baron Ohan dropped his spoon and stared at Kyle with a wide mouth. What? Chapter 344, Come to the Border. Kyle's figure blurred and before the old man could react, the spoon was back in his hand. Huh, an innocent smile played at the corner of Kyle's lips as he glanced at his father. Not just me, Bia has also reached the SS Plus rank. Butler Ian, who had just entered the hall, halted in his tracks as he witnessed and heard Kyle's words and actions. The little bird proudly raised her head and spoke up in a beautiful, serene voice. Of course, the majestic me is not someone who would stay behind. The two old figures stared at the bird with wide mouths. Kyle let out a chuckle and Ohan finally snapped out of his daze. He wiped his forehead, which had turned sweaty for some reason. You reached what rank? However, instead of Kyle, Bia climbed onto his shoulder and replied proudly. SS Plus rank, Ohan froze, and the little weight on his shoulder increased tenfold. After a long silence, the old man's eyes turned moist again. In the distance, Ian quickly sat down on a chair to calm his muddled heart. Kyle panicked and quickly stood up to pat his father's back, but his father's next words nearly made him laugh. I don't know what and how you did it, but I am proud of you. I was shocked when Elder Han told me you have SS rank talent. Now you're telling me you have reached a rank higher than even that. I know I never mentioned it, but in my heart I always knew that my lazy son would achieve something big one day. He grabbed Kyle's hand and tapped it gently. Kyle sat down and after Ian and Ohan both calmed down, he asked the other servants to leave them alone. In the next second, he raised his hand and drew a few symbols in the air, ensuring that no one could hear them. Then he glanced at his father with utmost seriousness. I want to know, in our ancestors, do we have someone who is exceptionally strong? Baron Ohan blinked and thought for a while. No, I was the only child of my parents, and I don't remember anyone strong in my grandparents' generation. Kyle nodded, but he wanted to know more. How about further in the past? A long, long time ago. Maybe 1,000 or 2,000 years ago. A deep expression appeared on the old man's face. He thought hard and long but didn't remember anyone strong. Kyle sighed. Do we have history books? Like the ones passed through generations. However, his father shook his head. Suddenly, Butler Ian spoke up. What about the ice enchantresses? I saw this book in the old house. If I remember correctly, it was quite old. Baron Ohan chuckled and shook his head. That book was just an old romance story I found in my parents' study. Maybe someone wrote it in their free time. I read it, but I don't think it's something that belongs to our ancestors. As far as I can remember, we don't have any grand ancestry. Kyle blinked when he heard ice in the name. Bia gazed at him with wide eyes. No way. Ask more about it. I feel like we'll get some clues about your bloodline. Noticing Kyle's curious expression, Ohan burst into laughter. Haha, it was just a romance book, but if you want to know, I'll tell you the main story. Well, it's an old tale about a beautiful woman who was known as a powerful battle mage around 4,000 years ago. She was called the Ice Enchantress throughout the whole book. He paused for a second to gather all the pieces of the story from his memory. I remember she and her two male companions were described as unique. They all had something special and they all wanted to become the strongest one day. There is a reason why I said the story is not true. The power ranks described in the book were a little different from the ones known in our continent, and the woman, she had something called a transcendent rank ice bloodline. Kyle's eyes narrowed and a solemn expression appeared on his face. Not much was described, but the story was quite good, at least until the trio's younger days. Then suddenly, one of her male companions acquired something very strong and became someone powerful. She was happy for him, but then he became distant. At first, the Ice Enchantress didn't care, but as time went on, she ended up falling in love with her second companion. Unfortunately, her choice wasn't the best because the person she fell with asked her to cheat the other one. In the end, together, the two of them betrayed their third friend. Baron Ohen let out a sigh. Afterward, the story ended abruptly. At the end of the book, a few lines were written in a messy scribble. They said, "I regret it. I regret it so much that it pained my heart. I'm sorry, I'm leaving first. I know the hell I created, but I'm too powerless. So I'm leaving behind a part of my essence, in case someone from my family can inherit it. I hope they can use it better to protect their loved ones." There was silence as Kyle processed the vast amount of information in the short story his father described. His mind raced with countless possibilities, but in the end, transcendent and celestial were two different ranks altogether. He massaged his temples and let out a bitter smile because, according to his father, the book didn't have any names. So does that mean my bloodline is somehow connected to her, and why in the world did she betray her friend, just for love and strength? Baron Ohen listened quietly, and Kyle's words were enough to shock the old man once again. But he didn't dare to ask Kyle any more questions, fearing that his fragile heart wouldn't be able to handle it. Kyle stood up and paced around with a frustrated expression. I wish I could say that it was just a storybook, but why do I feel like my peaceful life is getting too complicated with each passing day? For heaven's sake, I'm just in my 20s. Bia blinked at his words. Just how the hell is it related to your age? Kyle snapped his eyes toward her. You don't understand, I'm not that old to experience so much. I'm already suffering because of the artifact inside my heart. He clicked his mouth shut, but it was too late. In an instant, two pairs of old eyes fixated on him. Kyle couldn't help but let out a dry smile. No way was he going to worry his father with his problem. As he pondered the different ways to escape the situation, something suddenly started buzzing in his mind space. He quickly took out the communication crystal that Yue had given him before he left. Ohan and Ian were both prepared to pressure him for more information about the artifact Kyle had accidentally mentioned. However, the duo froze when a beautiful lady's image appeared above the communication crystal in Kyle's hand. Yue's brows furrowed as she called out his name. Kyle, can you hear me? Kyle sighed in his mind, feeling grateful for the timing. Yes, I can. What happened? The elven girl paused when she saw two more faces behind Kyle. Kyle blinked and looked at the two pairs of curious eyes staring at the communication crystal. Dad, Baron Ohen cleared his throat and stepped back. He quickly grabbed Ian and gave Kyle a solemn nod. She's pretty, I agree. After his hushed whisper, he hurriedly walked away with Ian, giving Kyle some space. Of course, inwardly, the duo was strategizing on how to make him spill everything about the artifact. Kyle watched their retreating figures with a bewildered expression. He snapped out of it when Yue called him again. What happened? Immediately, Yue's expression turned serious. She mouthed an apology and another familiar old elven figure appeared in the crystal. Anley narrowed his eyes at Kyle and let out a grunt. You look quite different from the past. Kyle's expression hardened as he saw the old man. Well, he'd be lying if he said he wasn't tempted to close the crystal. After all, no matter what, he still remembered the grudge from the past. Even though the man had trained him in Kingdom Tertia, he had also attacked him when he came out from the Tower of Opportunity. Regardless, Kyle waited patiently to hear what the latter had to say. Anley noticed his expression and went straight to the point. It was never my intention to disturb your time with your family, but I hope you remember that you owe the Elven King a favor. He wants to use it now. The Elven Kingdom needs as many strong individuals as possible right now, and you are the best option. Kyle furrowed his brows, but he wasn't someone who would go back on his words. All right, I'll come visit the kingdom in a while. However, before he could close the crystal, Anley stopped him. Come to the border directly, it's not because of the monsters. We were able to control them because the monster lords hadn't attacked yet. It's because the dark mage has attacked one of our borders. He has killed too many innocent people. Kyle nodded. He wasn't sure who this dark mage was, but if the latter was causing trouble, so it was better to take him out. Chapter 345. Someone else arrived before us. Kyle closed the communication crystal and walked out of the room. Ohan and Ian noticed his worried expression and asked what had happened. Kyle shook his head with a faint smile and explained that he had to leave for Kingdom Tertia because of some urgent matters. I'm sorry I just came back, but I have to leave again, but I promise next time I'll stay for a whole month. Baron Ohen shook his head. It's fine, you're old enough to take care of yourself. Just don't forget about your old man and come visit sometime. Also, if you come across your brothers, scold them for me. They ran off without my permission. I know they want to help others, but they should inform me first. Kyle nodded with a mischievous glint. Of course, he was more than happy to help his father teach his brothers a little lesson. Bia sighed and went to hug the old man too. I'll miss the food. Don't worry, even if he doesn't come back, I'll be here. Kyle rolled his eyes and grabbed the overdramatic phoenix. He waved at his father and butler Ian one last time before the duo left and started floating in the sky. Bia's wings fluttered gently in the air. Kyle raised his finger and drew a few symbols. Suddenly, a round, flickering portal appeared in the air. He glanced at his house one last time. For some reason, a bad feeling was nagging at him, but he couldn't explain it. "I'll be back soon." He stepped into the portal and Bia followed closely behind. In a grand hall, King Foron stood beside King Cedric, who had a serious expression. He looked at the kids in front of him and let out a sigh before glancing at Anley, who just arrived with a request for help. Cedric took one last look at Carcel and waved his hand at the youngsters. "Just go. The entire East Continent is in danger. It doesn't matter who falls first, because once the First Kingdom falls, the others won't last long either. Right now, Retrick and Prince Caspar are taking care of the Kingdom Escalante borders. I'll be joining them soon, so all of you should go and help take care of the Dark Mage." He paused, his expression turning serious. "Make sure he regrets his actions." Alec raised his weapon and the others followed suit. On the other side, Elder Han and another array master finished setting up the teleportation array. They called the kids to stand on it, and Anley stood in front of them humming. He nodded at the two kings, grateful for their acceptance of the sudden request. In the next moment, they all vanished from the hall. Cedric tapped Foron's shoulder. "I just noticed Giant has become much stronger, and so has your son, Kelvin." Foron chuckled and shook his head. "I'm leaving now. Since my son has decided to follow his friends, someone needs to go back and take care of the kingdom. I just received news that a few nobles are causing trouble." He left instantly, and Elder Han talked with Cedric about Kyle. Anley has already spoken with him. He will go directly to the Elven Kingdom. After Han left for the nearest border, Cedric turned around to make his way toward his study, but suddenly a faint tremble in his storage ring made him frown. He glanced at the old white jewel in his storage ring. It was trembling for some reason. "What happened?" Cedric paused when he sensed another presence behind him and turned to look. "Eiffel Windcrest, what brings you here? If you're looking for your daughter, she left with the other kids." Eiffel's feet touched the carpeted floor, and his amber eyes shone in the dim light as he gazed at the king's storage ring. "I know Yue isn't here. I'm not here for her. I want something from you. We can discuss it." Cedric's brow knitted together, and the jewel in his ring became more agitated with each passing second. He wasn't sure what it was, as he had found it in an old treasury. He folded his hands behind his back and narrowed his eyes. "Let's talk. If you can offer something valuable in return, I'm open to making a trade." Eiffel smiled, and as Cedric took out the jewel, it instantly leaped toward the two porcelain bracelets in Eiffel's hand. With a click, the white jewel merged with the bracelets. They trembled slightly, and Eiffel let out a thoughtful sound. "One more part in this artifact will be complete. I hope it's something useful, or else all the effort I put into collecting the parts would be in vain." He sighed and placed the bracelets in his storage ring. If Kyle were here, he would have recognized the bracelets. After all, he was the one who completed the symbols on one of the bracelets. Alec opened his eyes above a barren land and glanced at the others standing around him. Suddenly, two familiar figures appeared in front of them. Professor Aliza and Professor Liam greeted them with tired smiles. Their clothes were wrinkled and their weapons were stained with blood. They were among the first to arrive here after receiving an order from Principal Retrick to help. However, before they could even greet their old students and the unfamiliar kids, Anley impatiently led them toward the border. Alice's brow furrowed as she looked at Lily. She knew Lily had taken Kyle's place and entered the realm. Now the little girl had grown into a beautiful lady. Will she be all right? After all, the Dark Mage is her father. After a few minutes, the kids arrived at a village that housed a large border stretching in a straight line before the dark forest. They all took in shuddering breaths as they saw the village completely destroyed. The land was stained with blood, and low-rank monsters roamed around. The air echoed with the sounds of metal as countless elves in silver armor fought to kill as many monsters as possible. Anley instantly disappeared to help someone nearby. Alec closed his eyes for a second and pulled out his weapon to take down the monsters around him. The people around him joined the fight too. Together, they defeated all the nearby monsters and hurriedly followed Liam and Aliza. Within a minute, they reached the border, but it was already beyond saving. Half of it had collapsed, and more monsters kept pouring out from the dark forest every second. A large number of elves tried to stop them, and even though they managed to hold their ground, the number of monsters was just too much to handle. Amidst everything, the air around the border felt a bit cold for some reason. Alec glanced at Carcel, and with a nod, they floated up to lend a hand to as many people as possible. Alec's eyes glowed with a faint white light as he unleashed attack after attack on the monsters. After spending so much time in the realm, his swordsmanship became more graceful and precise. Carcel floated behind him, spinning his spear to take down just as many monsters. On their left, Regius, Kelvin, Lily Sinon, and the others started their rampage. Jian, Lara, Mia, and Yue stood at the back with the mages in a line, raining down countless spells on the monsters. After their arrival, the elves fighting in front of the border breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, reinforcements were here. Many lives had been lost, but as long as the situation didn't worsen, they could save a lot of lives. Nonetheless, it was strange. The elves didn't seem too surprised by the kids' over-the-top performance. Their expressions were kind of numb, like they had seen something even more mind-blowing before. As the youngsters quickly took their positions and began fighting, the number of monsters thinned with each passing minute. Yue raised her hand, and countless glowing arrows appeared behind her. The arrows shot out with lightning-fast speed, killing many monsters. "Where is the dark mage?" Her question was interrupted when, in a faraway place amidst the towering trees, a huge blast took place. Jian narrowed his eyes. "I can't see what's going on, it's too far away." Lara tapped his shoulder. "Let me." Her eyes glowed faintly, and in the next second a familiar tall figure with silver hair appeared in her vision. Far from the border, the man was almost crushing his opponent with the fire phoenix flying around him. Lara glanced at Jian, a faint smile playing on her lips. "It seems someone else arrived before us." Jian and Yue both stared at her, confused. Mia, Alec, Carcel, and the others who heard her words were also perplexed, but then a woman with long hair appeared beside Yue. Ira, one of the strongest guardians of the Elven Kingdom, rubbed her bandaged chest, and a faint smile appeared on her usually cold face. "The kid has indeed gotten stronger. Me and the people beneath you wouldn't have survived if he had come just a little later." Another figure appeared beside her. Anli wiped the blood stains from his shirt and raised his brow, surprised. "He arrived even before me." Yue's eyes widened slightly. "Is it Kyle?" Jian burst into laughter. "If it's him, then I don't think we need to worry about the Dark Mage. I can only hope that the Dark Mage ends up as an intact corpse." Suddenly, he pulled out a large boulder from his storage ring and tossed it in the distance towards a huge, round monster that had arrogantly walked out from the forest. The monster cried out as the weight descended on its head. Alec blinked, shocked. "Why does this look so familiar?" Many pairs of eyes instantly turned toward Jian, and he let out a shy smile. "What?" "I learned it from Kyle." Chapter 346. "We have an old score to settle." At most 10 minutes ago, before Anli and the others arrived, the air above the border trembled slightly and a bright portal appeared out of nowhere. Kyle stepped out from the portal and glanced down. Instantly his eyes turned cold. The border was half destroyed and the land was covered in blood. Countless individuals were trying to stop the monsters pouring out from the forest, but unfortunately they weren't able to. He wanted to lend a hand, but his eyes narrowed when he saw a familiar woman being thrown back, crashing into the border with a loud bang. The impact sent dust and debris flying everywhere, and the woman spat out a mouthful of blood. Kyle recognized her immediately. It was Ira, the guardian of the kingdom. She's the one who designed the monster wave during the event where he was chosen to enter the secret realm. Ira clenched her bloodied chest and glared at the black-robed man flying opposite her. "You bastard!" Her voice trembled slightly. The man, draped in a black robe, stared at her with his blood-red eyes and smirked. He raised his hand to kill the innocent elves around him, but Ira shielded them with her body. Even though her condition didn't look good, she tried to maintain her figure steady. Kyle raised his hand and wisps of blue flames appeared around his fingers. "He is the Dark Mage, right?" However, he was jolted by Bia's startled voice. The phoenix cried out in his head with anger and hatred. "That man, I know him. I know him, he was the one who kidnapped me. That bastard. OMG, my blood is boiling. I want to throw all my skills at his head." Kyle blinked. It took him a few seconds to understand her words, but when he did, he turned his head towards the man in the black robe with sharp eyes. Of course, he remembered. There was no way he would forget that old grudge. He cracked his knuckles and a laugh escaped from his lips, echoing loudly in the air. It caught the attention of almost everyone below. Ira snapped her head up. Her eyes widened a bit when she noticed a pair of brilliant green eyes staring back at her. Just like her, Zyner the Dark Mage also turned his head up, but his eyes dilated when he saw Bia. "Haha, the beast, the legendary beast, I want that beast." He burst into laughter. He had been searching for the beast for a while, and now that it had come to him on its own, there was no way he was letting it go. He licked his lip and his eyes gleamed with an ominous color. "I want her blood, her blood." He raised his hand to send Ira flying so he could grab the bird, but before he could, a cold hand grabbed his wrist. Zyner's eyes contracted when a pair of green eyes stared at him. He was about to let out a surprised gasp, but before he could, a powerful kick landed on his stomach with lightning speed. In the blink of an eye, in front of the onlookers, his body crashed back into the forest, shattering countless trees. His shrill cry echoed through the air as he desperately tried to regain his balance midair, but it was in vain. Kyle was ready to give chase, but Bia cried out in his head. "No, he's my opponent." The elves gasped with shock when the air trembled and a majestic phoenix appeared in the sky. Bia's wings flickered with crimson flames as she dove down toward the fallen figure with incredible speed. Kyle sighed softly and glanced back at the badly injured Ira. He reached into his mind space to pull out a healing potion and tossed it toward her. "I'll handle the Dark Mage." Stunned, Ira quickly grabbed the potion. She watched as Kyle's eyes glowed with a faint light and he disappeared once again, only to reappear amidst the monsters. The elves around him were startled, but before they could react, the ground beneath their feet trembled. The cold, flickering flames raced with lightning-fast speed, engulfing the monsters who cried out in surprise. The air grew instantly cold. Then in the blink of an eye, countless ice sculptures materialized around Kyle, only to vanish into tiny particles as quickly as they appeared. OMG, he is strong. Kyle glanced at the phoenix that had left to fight the dark mage so arrogantly, only to return after a few seconds. He clicked his tongue, and in the next second the blue flames around his body surged out in all directions to kill as many monsters as possible. The elves were shocked to see the surging flames that froze everything in their path. Kyle glanced at Ira, giving her a quick nod before he vanished and reappeared beside Bia. "What happened?" "He's insane. He tried to cut me with a blade. And he's not weak. I think you caught him off guard with that kick." Kyle shot her a raised brow, but he quickly looked away before Bia could notice. "Let's take him deep into the forest to prevent any further casualties." Bia nodded in agreement. In the next moment, Zeiner's floating figure appeared before them. The man let out a laugh and patted his robe. His red eyes gleamed when he glanced at Kyle. "Kid, you caught me off guard, but..." Before he could finish his sentence, another unexpected kick landed on his stomach, sending him flying back once again. Bia's eyebrow twitched violently. Of course, how the hell did she forget? The instant teleportation skill was made to catch others off guard. Zeiner cried out, but before he could catch his breath, Kyle once again appeared in front of him. He kicked the man repeatedly, and within a minute they were far away from the border. Kyle flashed a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I believe we have an old score to settle." Chapter 347, He's Still Alive. In the midst of the towering trees, not even the countless monsters running out from deep within the forest dared to approach a particular barren spot. Zeiner's eyes were bloodshot as he glared at the silver-haired man opposite him with pure hatred. His black robe was torn in various places, and one of his legs was bent at an unnatural angle. Slowly, he wiped the blood oozing from his mouth. "I won't believe I can't even land a single attack on him." Zeiner's gaze shifted to the flickering flames surrounding Kyle's body, the same flames that nearly froze him to death moments ago. He let out a menacing laugh. "You damn bastard!" He raised his hand, causing the ground beneath Kyle to cave in and transform into lava. But to his frustration, the lad vanished before the lava could even touch him. "Looking for me?" the dark mage snapped back upon hearing a familiar voice, only to grasp at empty air. Crazed laughter spilled out from his mouth as he stared at his hand. Zeiner clamped his mouth shut and eyed the little bird perched on a distant tree branch. From the beginning, the bird had been observing him while the silver-haired man kicked him repeatedly, his eyes dilated. "Haha, how about I kill it? The other one will show up." He leaped towards Bia with lightning-fast speed, but another kick landed on his back, sending him flying once again. Kyle glanced at the groaning man with cold eyes. "I said we have a grudge to settle, and yet you are seeking death, huh?" He stepped forward, his feet touching the ground with a deliberate pace as he approached the dark mage. Raising his foot, he placed it on the man's hand, instantly causing the latter to cry out in pain from the pressure. What I don't understand is why, after enduring so much suffering, you still want to harm my bonded beast." Kyle narrowed his eyes, seeking an explanation. Zeiner's eyes flickered with countless possibilities, and he let out a stifled laugh. "Give the bird to me. I will give you something that will make you stronger, so strong that no one will be able to touch you, haha." "Oh!" his cry echoed as Kyle increased the weight on his hand. Kyle's brows knitted together as he glanced back at Bia. "What did he do to you when he kidnapped you?" Bia blinked and pondered for a few seconds. "Blood. Remember, I was injured. He didn't kill me, but he took my blood and did some strange experiments." Kyle massaged his temples. "So the dark mage took Bia's blood and created something that could potentially enhance someone's strength. Is there something special in your blood? You are a phoenix after all." Bia unfurled her wings and soared through the air. "My blood does have healing properties, but it's only useful for minor injuries. I don't think anyone would be crazy enough to drink blood just to cure a bruise. So nothing useful, it's just a guess, okay? Maybe after bonding with you, the effects were enhanced. Your bloodline could have influenced my blood." Kyle blinked, realizing that this was actually a possibility. He raised his leg, preparing to kick the man, but before he could, a familiar voice echoed behind him. He turned around and saw Jian floating midair. Jian's long hair fluttered as he waved his hand with a mischievous glint. "I thought you might need some help, but now that I see the state of your opponent, I believe my previous words were accurate." He landed opposite Kyle, but before he could say anything else, Kyle crushed Zeiner's hand. Jian's eyes widened in surprise. "Wait, don't kill him. Ira said she would take him to the capital city to execute him in front of everyone. That way, in the future, no one would dare to harm the Elven Kingdom." Kyle raised an eyebrow, his expression filled with surprise. Jian nearly dropped to his knees as wisps of blue flames traveled to the dark mage's legs, freezing them completely. The ice quickly dissipated into bright particles, vanishing into the air. The dark mage let out a shrill cry, causing nearby monsters to become frightened. Kyle let out an innocent "oh" to emphasize that it was purely an accident before walking toward Giant and patting his shoulder. "He's still alive." Giant glanced at Kyle, then looked at the man who had lost consciousness from the intense pain. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "It would have been better if you had killed him. Just look at his condition." Giant so badly wanted to say it out loud, but he remained silent because he knew Kyle would actually turn back to kill the man. Kyle's feet left the ground as he glanced at the border. "Bia, let's lend them a hand and clear out some monsters. The numbers are getting overwhelming again." Kyle vanished towards the border and Bia swiftly floated behind him, leaving Giant to take care of the half-dead dark mage. Soon Kyle appeared above the border. He glanced at the familiar figures fighting the monsters. All of them were doing great. He hummed and vanished, only to appear beside Alec, who almost slashed his sword at him due to his sudden appearance. Alec calmed his heart and glared at the infuriating silver-haired man who had mirth dancing in his eyes. Alec rolled his eyes and kicked a nearby monster. Instantly, Kyle drew his new SS rank sword to join the battle, but then suddenly a hand tapped his shoulder. He turned back only to see Carcel with a solemn expression. The prince tightly grabbed his shoulder and spoke with deadly seriousness. "Don't appear out of nowhere, I almost attacked you." Well, Carcel paused for a second and Kyle swore he noticed an evil smile at the corner of his lips. "Next time I won't stop midway and just attack. After all, what if it's a monster?" Kyle's smile stiffened and he gave him a quick nod. Alec, who witnessed their interaction, immediately froze. His lips would have curled up into a smile if not for Kyle, who glared at him with a deadpan expression. Chapter 348. You are kidding, right? In a grand and regal space, filled with luxurious furnishings and exquisite decorations, the room boasted high ceilings and large windows that allowed natural light to pour in. However, the tranquility was shattered when Astalion tossed a glass to the floor. The glass crashed, its pieces scattering in all directions, causing Seraphine, Lucas, and Sen, who were standing in front of him, to instinctively tremble. Yet before the king could snap at the trio, Nine stared at him with clenched fists. "No matter what, we are from the sea continent. You have no right to detain us." Astalion let out a laugh, frustration etched on his face. He desired the divine essence, and yet these kids couldn't even find it with a map. He turned his gaze to Lucas and Sen and his face darkened. "You two are useless. I thought you could at least handle this task, but I was mistaken. I should have sent someone better." Astalion wanted to raise his hand, but the shadow behind him screamed inside his head with anger. The king clenched his heart and glared at the four individuals standing opposite him. "Leave and never show me your face again." The moment they left, he spat out a mouthful of blood and glared at the wisps of dark energy emanating from behind him. The shadow let out an angry chuckle. "Where is the divine essence? I told you to send someone powerful, but now how am I going to construct my body? Haha, if I don't get the divine essence, I will kill you." He paced around the room, causing the air to tremble. Suddenly, he snapped and glanced back at Astalion. "There's a way. I sense divine energy in that phoenix's body. Get me the phoenix. It doesn't matter what you do, I want the phoenix." Astalion's eyes widened slightly. "The phoenix has divine energy in its body." The shadow didn't say anything else and increased the pressure on his heart. Astalion cursed and agreed. "Give me some time. I will get the phoenix." Astalion sighed with relief as the pain dissipated into thin air. Regardless, he chuckled to himself. How was he supposed to get the phoenix? After all, both the phoenix and its owner were too strong. In the meantime, Nine quietly walked behind Seraphine, Lucas, and Sen after emerging from the room. His face remained calm, but he felt troubled inside. The divine essence, he remembered it's with Kyle. Should I contact him? But I don't have his communication crystal coordinates. I wonder if he even has one. Suddenly, an elder from the sea continent appeared before them. The old man expressed his anger at Astalion for detaining their princess and prince. However, Nine noticed with a scoff that he was all talk. Lucas and Sen quickly left them alone, and after grumbling for a while, the elder led Nine and Seraphine to a secluded corner. He glanced around and hastily drew a few symbols in the air, scattering some mana stones so they could leave the city directly. But when he turned around, Nine had vanished into thin air. The elder cried out in surprise and Seraphine's eyes widened. She hadn't even noticed when Nine slipped away. He had always been standing right beside her. She wanted to follow Nine, after all, she knew where he would go, but the elder made her go back because the queen was worried about her. Seraphine glared at the empty spot behind her and clenched her jaw. "I'll just head back for now. Once I get permission from the queen, I'll head to the east continent." After she and the elder disappeared, Nine peeked out from a room. He hadn't gone too far, just found a hiding spot. He chuckled and rubbed his hands. "I don't really care about the sea continent. It's better if I go hang out with my friends. Plus, my future wife's probably worried about me." He wiped his dry eyes and tiptoed around, but even after wandering the castle for an hour, he couldn't find an exit. Frustrated, he decided to take matters into his own hands and jumped out of a nearby window, only to be chased by a guard. Nine cursed and started floating, but that only attracted more guards. Eventually, he landed on the ground and revealed his identity to them. He massaged his temples with a sigh. Why the heck was I sneaking around when I could have just left normally? The guards were suspicious since not many people had seen him. But when Nine mentioned Lucas and Sen's names, they confirmed his identity and politely escorted him outside. Nine stretched his legs as he looked at the scorching sun. He started floating and quickly scanned the nearest city to find a teleportation device so he could directly go to Kingdom Escalante. In Kingdom Tercia, the air above the partially broken border trembled as Bia's eyes narrowed, and a sea of fire descended upon the forest. The nearby elves fighting panicked as the fire spread through the trees, but before the flames could harm anyone, Bia controlled them, directing them to surround the monsters emerging from the forest. Kyle nodded in approval. Bia had indeed become more powerful. A faint smirk appeared on his lips. Ah, finally, one of my dreams has come true. I have a legendary beast strong enough to clear the path for me. However, his smile faltered as he remembered the countless treasures he had to feed her in order for her to reach a higher rank quickly. Well, it's worth it, he nodded solemnly. After the number of monsters dwindled around the border, many of the elves let out cries of relief. They had been fighting for so long, but the new arrivals swiftly dealt with the initial wave of monsters in just a few hours. Anli and Ira glanced at the figures floating around them, and a faint smile graced their faces. These kids were the future of their continent. Alizar and Liam also felt a swell of pride as they watched their students fight so brilliantly. However, Kyle wasn't done yet. He hated it when things dragged on and he had to think too much. He knew that neither Kingdom Tercia nor Kingdom Escalante were safe until the monster lords were out of the picture. My head's already filled with the artifact, and I have to track down that bastard who put it inside my heart without a clue. Moreover, I need to join Alec in searching for the person damaging the planet's core. So I think it's best if we put an end to this once and for all. He groaned a bit and rubbed his temples. Why do I feel like I'm working so much when I don't even have a useful divine artifact like Alec? Bia glanced at him with narrowed eyes. Why the heck are you talking so much? If you want to think, just do it in your head and don't disturb my peace. Kyle chuckled and disappeared into thin air. In the next moment, he reappeared amidst the clouds. Instantly, his nose was overwhelmed by countless scents, but the strongest one was the smell of blood. After a minute, his eyes faintly glowed as he stared in two different directions. Gotcha. Now we just need to go and take out the monster lords directly. Bia, in the midst of battling another monster, nearly lost her balance in midair upon hearing his words. Haha, you're kidding, right? She laughed dryly. No way. It had to be a joke. Chapter 349, The Monster Lord's Location. Kyle didn't answer and vanished once again, only to reappear in front of the crowd. The battle was almost over, with only a few low-rank monsters remaining. Alec and the others had already stopped fighting. He raised his hands to clap, but abruptly, a strange feeling welled up inside his chest. He blinked, and for a moment his eyes turned hazy. A fleeting thought crossed his mind, warning him of impending danger, but it slipped away before he could fully comprehend it. What just happened? Kyle shook his head with a frown, trying to clear his mind. He clapped his hands and blue flames scattered in all directions, swiftly finishing off the remaining monsters. The elves cheered with joy. Finally, after all the struggle, the first wave of monsters had been defeated. However, the floating individuals raised their heads towards Kyle, who cleared his throat to get their attention. Alec floated up and approached him with a questioning look, followed by Carcel and all the others who could fly. Kyle raised his finger and quickly drew a symbol, creating a faint barrier to keep their voices from traveling outside. Then he looked at Alec, Carcel, and the familiar faces. I found the monster lord's location. They're in different places. How about we go and take them out directly? A few gasps echoed through the air, but Kyle's gaze was fixed on Alec, who smiled. Alec ran his hand through his hair and glanced at an old system notification. As soon as he arrived at the border, he received a mission to defeat one of the two monster lords, and he would jump straight to SSS Plus rank as a reward. Moreover, if he killed the second one as well, he would gain a divine rank skill. Alec glanced at Kyle, and before anyone could reject, he agreed. It's better this way, we would be able to save a lot of lives. Also, if the monster lords are gone, the other monsters would scatter and won't attack the borders. After him, Carcel agreed too, but he raised a question: how would they kill the monster lords? After all, the monster lords would be surrounded by countless other strong monsters. If killing the monster lords was so easy, why would the strongest in their kingdoms wait until now? Kyle blinked and flashed an innocent smile that for some reason sent chills down Bia's spine. Don't worry, I've got a plan. Carcel raised an eyebrow and Giant cracked his knuckles. So what are we waiting for? Let's recover our mana and head towards the nearest monster lord. Regius hummed softly. You're right. With so many of us, I think we can easily defeat a monster lord. Alec, Lara, Carcel, Mia, Jayan, Ua, Niam, Kyle, Bia. They all have the strength of SS rank. In my opinion, it would be too easy. Anley glanced at the kids. He refused to let the youngsters face such danger. Even Liam and Aliza spoke up, but after Kyle said that he had a plan, they were ignored like thin air. If Ira had been here, she would have also refused, but she went back to the capital with the dark mage's unconscious body. After all his friends agreed, Kyle pointed his finger towards the nearest monster lord, the one who would probably attack the Elven Kingdom, and gestured for everyone to follow behind. Alec glanced at everyone, and with a nod, they all floated behind Kyle. The air trembled as Bia glanced down at the many floating figures. For some unknown reason, her left eyelid twitched violently. A bad premonition stabbed at the back of her head, but she couldn't pinpoint what it was. Anley cursed and immediately followed behind. On the way, he hurriedly called as many people as possible to let them know about the crazy situation. Liam and Aliza also took out their communication crystals and immediately called Principal Retrick. The old man almost had a heart attack when he heard the news. He screamed at the two professors to stop the youngsters in any way possible, but Aliza and Liam could only sigh. Who would have thought there would come a time when they would be powerless against the kids they trained just a few years ago? The news quickly reached the 5 kings of the East Continent. They wanted to send their forces behind the kids, but unfortunately their forces couldn't arrive on time. After all, the other borders of Kingdom Tercia and Kingdom Escalante were still under attack by the monsters. After traveling for 2 hours, Kyle paused deep inside the dark forest, above a peaceful lake surrounded by tall trees. Completely unaware of the turmoil he caused throughout the entire East Continent, Kyle narrowed his eyes, and the rest of the individuals came to a halt behind him. Alec tightened his grip on his sword, looking around the quiet forest, but this part seemed strangely calm. Unable to contain his curiosity, he questioned Kyle with a serious expression. Don't tell me the monster lord is hiding here alone. If so, we might have a chance to take it out easily. Kyle blinked. No, the monster lord is further deep inside the forest, surrounded by powerful monsters. I just sensed something good in this place, so I thought it would be best to check it out along the way. Right? Alec chuckled, a small vein popping on his forehead. He couldn't believe they had been holding their breath for nothing. Yeah, right. He rolled up his sleeves and gave Kyle a murderous look, but before he could pounce on Kyle, the latter disappeared. Kyle appeared in a distance and stared at him with a hurt expression. I swear we would regret it if we left this place without checking it out. You know, I sensed so much pure mana it was overwhelming. He landed next to the lake and gazed at the crystal clear water. I believe there's a big natural treasure beneath the lake. I would have come alone, but then I thought about you all. Kyle shrugged and smirked as he stared at them. Alex scoffed, but his expression revealed his interest. In the next second, Kyle gave Beer a signal to watch the surroundings and jumped into the water. Alec glanced at the others and clicked his tongue before following behind him. Jayan laughed and followed suit. Whenever he followed Kyle, he always found something good, so there was no way he would stay behind. Yue glanced at Lara and Mia, and the trio also entered the water. After them, everyone else also jumped in the lake. Anley stared at the lake and let out a frustrated laugh. Why the hell are they trusting him like he would be right? He wanted to stay back and wait for reinforcements so he could bring the kids back. But suddenly, Liam and Aliza also jumped in the lake. He stared at their fading backs with disbelief. All right, so we're all getting childish, huh? He scoffed, but curiosity got the better of him. After a minute, he followed behind them. Bia gazed at their fading figures and let out a tired sigh. Are you sure you sense something similar to the earth layer that Haley mentioned in his story? Instantly, Kyle's voice echoed in her head. The mana is incredibly dense, it's almost unbelievable. I'm 100% certain that there's something valuable deep beneath the water. Bia chuckled dryly, wondering how the ones who lost the layer would react to this news.